Good morning. Welcome to RSBN's Live Desk. I'm Robert McNeely. In 2 hours from now, the GOAT, Karoline Leavitt, the superstar, as President Trump puts it, holding a press briefing following another Liberation Day for the federal city. And we have special guests visiting today, including Ashley Brassfield from the Daily Caller, just detailing, in fact, how dangerous it is in Washington, D.C. And this is a favorite of ours here at the network. We love to travel to the federal city and cover whether it's the big, bold, beautiful military parade celebrating our Army, to the inauguration coverage, to traveling on Air Force One. It's something we love to do here at the network, and we deeply care about covering the government you put into place on November 5th of last year. And we'll see the updates regarding everything 200 days after President Trump has been sworn into office for that second term. Now, Liberation Day in Washington, D.C., President Trump yesterday making bold steps to the Home Rule Act in Washington, D.C., this executive action for the cesspool of crime that's become our federal city. And as he put it, don't cancel your vacations by the time you end up there with your family, whether it's later on this summer or even into the fall months. You can enjoy the history, the museums, and everything your federal city has to offer to you, because the crime and the homelessness, the defecating on the streets, beating up of people, and the shootings simply should not happen. And right after this press briefing by Karoline Leavitt in the James S. Brady briefing room at the White House, we will have live coverage as well in another stream of Judge Jeanine Pirro, of course, the top prosecutor in Washington, D.C., to detail further her comments from yesterday and the fact that Muriel Bowser, even the Democrat D.C. mayor, stating that she is looking forward to that continued partnership with Jeanine Pirro in order to make our streets safer, because it's a municipal crime issue. And being that it is home rule and really under the cloak of the federal government, this is President Trump's opportunity to really give a blueprint on how to make American cities safe again, to make them the crown jewels of the American ethos. And we know, like, places, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, all have mayors, and within their states, radical governors who turn the other cheek when it comes to fentanyl poisoning, when it comes to gang-related murders, when it comes to crime in their cities, whether it be from legal residents or illegal aliens, and that is the proper term for that. At 11:03 on the East Coast this fine morning, thank you for joining us on the right side of history as President Trump outlined his plan just yesterday in that press conference that was a packed house for the Washington, D.C. press pool. Now, this is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. President Trump mentioning that, in addition to, we're declaring a public safety emergency in the District of Columbia, and Attorney General Pam Bondi is taking command of the Metropolitan Police Department as of this moment. They'll immediately begin massive enforcement operations targeting known gangs and drug dealers, also criminal networks, to get them the hell off of our streets. President Trump also mentioning that the murder rate in Washington today is higher than that of Bogota, Colombia, Mexico City, Mexico, and also the number of car thefts has doubled in the past 5 years. And if you remember as well, you had two young girls, 13 and 14, who carjacked and led to the murder of the person who was behind that wheel initially. They were let off on probation. These people need to be charged as criminals. There's really no rehabilitating in a moment when you do something, when it's attempted robbery, attempted murder, or creating chaos within your city. And exactly what Judge Jeanine Pirro touched on during the press conference yesterday, and I'm sure we'll detail more in her discussions today following the press briefing with Karoline Leavitt at the White House. Now, this dire public safety crisis stems directly from the abject failures of the city's local leadership. As President Trump mentioned yesterday, actions to end lawlessness is welcome news to the residents of the federal city. The mayor seems not to have enough control of the activities that are arising, according to a man whose 3-year-old granddaughter was shot and killed in Washington, D.C. This is not a partisan issue. This is an issue of public safety for all people, says a former D.C. advisory neighborhood commissioner. If it's going to stop the crime, then yeah, it's necessary, stating a resident whose neighborhood was recently rocked by violent shootouts. And I'm so happy they're doing that because of this capital in the United States. And we have to make people want to come and visit. It's awesome. We have extra police presence to keep everybody safe, to keep them coming back. This was a visitor to the nation's capital recently. Also, another resident stating that some days I feel unsafe going outside. And I almost feel a little bit desensitized in a way because it seems to be the norm. More lamenting from DC-based residents who are talking about incidents of crime in their neighborhoods. Another resident stating, we got caught in the middle of a drive-by shooting, so that was horrible. They need to do more about juvenile crime. I think it's because they keep letting them go. And the White House stating that, yes, DC crime is out of control. Washington, D.C. should be a symbol of pride and fortitude, patriotism for the American people. It's where it all began. When you think about it, every president, you can see the White House there on the split screen, has lived there with the exception of our father of our country, General George Washington. But from John Adams on, from 1800 on, every commander-in-chief living on those hallowed grounds right there at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. A beacon of hope, a beacon of intimidation, and also inspiration. It's meant to humble and scare off a bit those who would visit Washington, D.C., those foreign friends or even adversaries when they come to meet with the President of the United States. And President Trump has used that in such an extraordinary way with that home field advantage of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. We've seen the art of the deal with countless leaders now who come to visit the president, whether it's talking tariffs, talking world peace, talking about global security and infrastructure, or simply avoiding annihilation, as Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu has visited now the White House, I think, on 3 occasions over the course of this second term. Also someone who nominated President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. But unfortunately, the fake news journalists and politicians go out of their way to claim otherwise, including that one in the front row yesterday, simply rolling his eyes after he asked President Trump a forward question, as he should in this line of work. But President Trump said, I make deals. It's what I'm good at. And we've seen it time and again. And then for anyone to simply roll their eyes at this great builder, citizen servant, the 45th commander and 47th president of the United States, he's done a damn good job at it. And it's been a masterclass every day in this second term, now 200 plus days into that. So here are the facts. In 2024, Washington, D.C. saw a homicide rate of 27.3 per 100,000 residents. This is 5 times the homicide rate in Mexico City. That was the 4th highest homicide rate, in fact, in the entire country, and nearly 6 times higher than New York City, and also higher than Atlanta, Chicago, and Compton. If Washington, D.C. was a state, it would have the highest homicide rate of any state in the nation. And in 2012, the homicide rate in Washington, D.C. was just 13.9 peoples per 100,000 residents. Now, Washington, D.C.'s murder rate is roughly 3 times higher than that of Islamabad, Pakistan, and 18 times higher than the communist-run Havana, Cuba. And we've heard this from other personalities on the new media. Our friend Tucker Carlson mentioned his visit to Moscow, Russia, and that was during the time of the Russia hoax. We know now that there were people who were leaking information against and to usurp the executive authority of the President of the United States, and also from the prior administration of Barack Hussein Obama, who clearly looked like they were running some sort of scheme to take down President Donald Trump. With Crossfire Hurricane and the Steele dossier, we know the Hillary Clinton campaign did spy on President Trump's campaign and the Trump Tower. We look forward to Bill and Hillary Clinton being subpoenaed by James Comer in the House Oversight Committee to find out not only those questions, but why he traveled on the Lolita Express 28 times, in turn making that Air Force One to Jeffrey Epstein's island. I hope we get some answers there, but I'm sure they will have some high-powered attorneys on their side of the docket. Now, the number of juveniles arrested in Washington, D.C. has gone up each year since 2020, many of whom have prior arrests for violent crimes. There were 29,348 crimes reported in Washington, D.C. just last year, including 3,469 violent offenses, 1,026 assaults with a dangerous weapon, 2,113 robberies, and 5,139 motor vehicle thefts. I mean, try to put that into perspective. It kind of makes me shake and makes my goosebumps rise, because I have friends there, I have colleagues there that, I mean, they're using the metro system, they are walking, they're not using necessarily their own form of transportation outside of public transportation, and they're in the crosshairs of all this when they're simply trying to do their job and serve the American people. It's simply wrong. And so far, in 2025, there have already been nearly 1,600 violent crimes, nearly 16,000 total crimes reported in Washington, D.C. As we break down these numbers today, we'd like to thank our sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Ivermectin and mebendazole now 25% off. Use that code RSBN10 for an additional 10% off. So these are essential medications, including those with the PBMs and insurance companies some pharmacies don't want you to have. Like I mentioned, ivermectin, mebendazole, methylene blue, NAD+, all life-saving medications that can be the difference between life or death with a bacterial or viral infection. So protect you and yours, stock that medicine cabinet, and also travel with these emergency medical kits and, again, those 200 essential medications that you could take on the road during your summer holidays and vacations. Scan the QR code there right now, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. When you take care of your health and you have that all solved, throw down some bets and some trades at kalshi.com/RSBN. Will President Trump pardon someone like Steve Bannon, a great patriot? And you think about him, you think about Tulsi Gabbard and Peter Navarro, those who have really sacrificed for this country, in fact, been put in handcuffs by deep state globalist actors, the League of Shadows, because they are simply defending the Bill of Rights and the populist movement. Right-wing populism is what is making America great again and ultimately making the world safe again by giving people access to markets that they were once denied. Remember, these people, they wanted to bankroll China and bankrupt Detroit, whether they are neoliberals or neocons over the last 30 years. But will Elon Musk create a new political party as a result of that globalist foreign policy, the American Party? See what happens with all of that. Scan that QR code there now, kalshi.com/RSBN. Trade on anything. Will the LA Dodgers repeat the World Series championship just as the Florida Panthers did in the NHL with the Stanley Cup? Something not easy to do. Whether it's politics, music, sports, or culture, you can trade on just about everything in America and abroad at kalshi.com/RSBN. Thank you for your sponsorship. Vehicle thefts in Washington, D.C. is now more than 3 times the national average, ranking it the most dangerous among cities in the entire world. Carjackings increased 547% between 2018 and 2023. In 2024 alone, there were triple the number of carjackings compared to the year of 2018. These statistics are not only troubling on their own, but they also are likely significantly understating the level of crime that truly exists in Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department leadership allegedly are cooking the books to make crime statistics appear more favorable, and many residents don't feel safe as a result. And that's why they have someone like Terry Cole, who will be overseeing all of these operations with the National Guard being provided by SecDef Pete Hegseth over at the Pentagon, and a national security team that is committed to the health and safety of the residents in Washington, D.C. and across the entire country, regardless of political background, demographic, or the zip code that you call home. Now, more than half of all violent crime in the U.S. goes unreported in the first place, which is actually quite frightening considering that the numbers are so high to begin with in our big cities specifically. And according to WUSA-TV, local news in the federal city, D.C. residents voice frustration over rising violence, questioning police stats and demanding real action to make neighborhoods feel safe again. Even national ABC anchors mentioned that they were mugged on the way to work, which is along that media row in Washington, D.C., just north of Lafayette Park and a stone's throw away from the White House. Many, if you're a good golfer, if you hit the ball straight, you can actually probably hit a window of the White House if you were to tee off from ABC News's bureau chief headquarters there. And it's a sad thing to see all that, especially in these beautiful summer months where crime does go up. And even near my hometown of Chicagoland, crime would always spike in the summer months, especially amongst gang-related activity. And we hope to see now with the home rule being invoked that this will make a major difference for our federal city, because it's historical. There are so many amazing museums, and to explore what has happened in this great country and around the world, it's the cornerstone of Western civilization. And not only in the architecture, but also in what's taken place in America 250. You deserve to be safe. And not everyone can get up and just move. And sometimes jobs are in those big cities still, even with the pandemic and what happened in wake of the George Floyd protests of 2020. Our big cities have taken a major hit. Our police departments depleted as a result. But 3,500 sworn officers, allegedly, I'm looking forward to seeing what this team, from a federal perspective, gets to the bottom of, because it's not that large of an area considering residents just shy of 800,000 who are living in the District of Columbia. And if they really had 3,500 sworn officers, as President Trump was stating yesterday, crime should not be as high as it is. So we'll see what happens with this federal assistance, and I'm sure that will bring down crime as a result. And the federal response in a larger way, not only securing the border, but with state and local officials, especially in Virginia, Governor Glenn Youngkin just months ago praising the work of Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel, as well as Border Czar Tom Homan and federal partners that are now being funded in an extraordinary way. 10,000 open positions at ICE now fully funded thanks to the One Big Beautiful Bill signed into law by President Trump on the 4th of July. 80,000 plus applicants, including Dean Cain, who played Superman on television, going to service for this great nation. So it's great to see the increase in recruitment, not only state, local, federal levels for police departments, DEA, ICE, and all related agencies under the scope and umbrella of the Department of Homeland Security, but also increased numbers in our military, because that's why government exists in the first place: the general prosperity and protecting the homeland and residents from any violent threat. That's law and order that must be upheld, as it was back during the Nixon administration and now in the Trump administration, handling situations when they are out of control in our big cities. Now, taking a focus on China and what's moved there, President Trump moving a moratorium 90 days on a trade agreement that would basically be a standstill for any kind of tariffs at the moment. So a joint statement on the U.S.-China Economic and Trade meeting in Stockholm, Sweden recently. The government of the United States of America and the government of the People's Republic of China were calling the joint statement on the United States-Chinese Economic and Trade meeting in Geneva on May 12th of 2025. Reflecting on these meetings, the parties recalled the commitments that the Geneva joint statement made and take action on the following items by today. The United States will continue to modify the application of the additional ad valorem rate of duty on articles of China. This includes articles of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region and the Macau Special Administrative Region, set forth in Executive Order 14257 of April 2nd of 2025. So this is an additional period of 90 days starting on August 12th at the order of the President of the United States. This joint statement is based on discussions that took place during the U.S.-China Economic and Trade meeting in Stockholm, and the representative on the Chinese side for this meeting was He Lifeng. He is the vice premier of the State Council, where Scott Bessent and Jamieson Greer, the Secretary of Treasury and United States Trade Representative, were both in those meetings. So there will be an upcoming meeting, most likely probably when President Trump solves this whole issue between Russia and Ukraine. We can look forward to that on Friday. But one big piece of the goals by the end of this year from the White House, having that sit-down meeting potentially with President Xi, and that could take place in China, could take place right here in the United States. We will be here for you to cover all of that, because that will matter with global economic trade and what it means ultimately for the dollar and your investments. We know that the Chinese Communist Party has continued to break international law and rules. And we've had United States Senator Tommy Tuberville on the network stating just that: 2.2 million acres of farmland in control of the CCP in Alabama alone, let alone farmland throughout the United States. And it's been the great work of President Trump, Secretary Brooke Rollins at the USDA, governors and congressmen, senators, and other state and local leaders who have blown the whistle on this and said enough is enough, especially from the Auto Pen administration, because they created such unburdensome, ridiculous regulations for our farmers that they had to sell to the highest bidder. That's why you have these bird killers that are on their farms, these ridiculous wind energy bird killers that get set up on their farms, and you literally cannot recycle these things. They create so much with the carbon footprint, and guess what? China is producing them. They don't have any in their country. Wonder why that is. Thanks to our sponsors on the right side of history, angelpaste.com, the miracle cream that is infused with vitamin B's, and also it's non-GMO, no chemicals, or the orange option that is the immunity fighting and booster. It's a big one, vitamin C infused as well with non-GMO and no chemicals. How about the natural mosquito repellent and the facial spray, big in the summertime months, so you can paint the town red. Angelpaste.com, they're Christian owned, they hire veterans, and they're based out of Spring, Texas in the Houston Metroplex. We're big fans of theirs, and I love their products. So you should try the many different options at angelpaste.com. Take a look today and experience the miracle right now. And at covepure.com/RSBN, you can get $200 off of this great reverse osmosis system. So Utah and Florida, they signed legislation or put a bill up for their governors when it comes to getting fluoride and chemicals out of the water. There was a recent study done by JAMA Pediatrics that for every liter of water that is produced from the tap, that you actually have a significantly poisonous amount of fluoride and other chemicals contaminations in the water supply. So if you want to have fluoride, that's fine. There's sodium fluoride in toothpaste. I use Tom's personally, so I don't have to ingest that petroleum-based chemical that was put into our dental supply, but it should not be in the water first and foremost. And remember when they said conspiracy theories and went after RFK Jr., our great Secretary of Health and Human Services, regarding this issue? Well, it's become fact. It's now known thanks to all these studies. So you can protect yourself, protect your family, drink pure, live pure at covepure.com/RSBN. $200 off of this extraordinary product. Get yours today. Sits right on the countertop. Very easy to add, and it's not cumbersome or burdensome to have with all of your other appliances. covepure.com/RSBN. $200 off now. Thank you for your sponsorship on the right side of history as we break down U.S.-China relations, something that will be on the forefront, perhaps something that White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, the superstar, the GOAT of press secretaries, as President Trump puts it, might track just today, as wage growth is really fantastic as inflation remains low and stable. So the CPI report revealed that inflation beat market expectations once again and remains stable, underscoring President Trump's commitment to lower costs for American families and businesses, something that the legacy media really will not cover. Now, the panicans continue to be proven wrong by data, and according to the White House, President Trump's tariffs are raking in billions of dollars for small businesses. The optimism is at least at a 5-month high, and real wages are rising. The American people have rightfully put their trust in President Trump's America First agenda, and that is making America's wealth big again. White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt stating just that. Here's what you need to know before this press briefing today. Since President Trump took office, inflation is tracking at 1.9%, low and stable. Real average weekly earnings increased in July. These wages are up now 1.3% over the last year and have increased each month since President Trump took office. Now, wage growth for American workers is beating inflation, and Americans are getting more hours at work. So this whole panicking that the tariffs are going to cause too much inflation and that it actually will hurt the American economy, nothing could be further from the truth, because you've seen with all of these different trade deals and the reshaping of the global trade across the world, that each time President Trump has put the tariff threat against respective nations, friends and foe, they come running to the table. You heard what Dmitry Medvedev said, the failed former president of Russia and still a party leader within that country, that he would want to go the nuclear option and actually threaten to use those weapons if President Trump moves forward with the 100% secondary tariffs if this war does not come to an end. President Trump said, watch your words, and there were 2 nuclear subs, American subs, that were in those Russian waters as a result of the insane statements of Medvedev. We'll see what President Putin has to say as he meets with President Trump on Friday in Anchorage, Alaska. Now, prices for everyday goods continue to decline just in time for back-to-school shopping as we welcome all the students back here in Auburn, Alabama, a great university just down the street from us, part of the Southeastern Conference, where it matters more. Energy prices are falling in July. They include gasoline, down nearly 10% last month over the last year, as well with propane, now down 2.5% over the course of the last year. Egg prices continue to fall as well, again in July, and they're down 20% since President Trump took office. A great form of protein, one of the more popular things to have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm a big fan of that myself, so go out there and get that, and don't listen to the 1950s science that said that cholesterol and eggs are bad for you. Nothing could be further from the truth. Now, smartphones, they're down 14.7% year to year. Fuel oil down 2.9%. Energy commodities down 9%. Hotels down nearly 5%. Education and communication commodities down over roughly 4.3% in that ballpark. Shipping fares 4.9%. Propane down 2.5%. Internet services down 2.5%. Butter and margarine down nearly 2%, including non-prescription drugs and books. This all adds up when you go back to school, especially as a college student. Rice and pasta down 1.5%. Frozen veggies 2.2%. Tinned fish 1.3%. Sports tickets down about 1%. They're still kind of expensive there, but peanut butter down 3.3%. This gives people an opportunity to have more buying power and to have your dollar go a little bit further over the course of what Joe Biden created, a horrible economy for the American people. If he simply sat back and did nothing and went to Rehoboth Beach even more than he did, and just ate his ice cream cones and fell off his bike and fell up the stairs on Air Force One, would have been just fine to leave the Trump policies in place. But thank God that the Trump tax cuts are now permanent via the One Big Beautiful Bill, and you have the rescission packages now happening as Congress is enjoying their summer break, meeting with constituents. Small business optimism reached a 5-month high, according to Bloomberg. Sentiment among U.S. small businesses climbed to a 5-month high in July as owners grew more upbeat about the economic outlook, fueling a pickup in expansion plans. So it's promises made and promises kept, and this president continues to make America great again with a few more items to close out the year, moving at a breakneck pace with a Republican Congress committed to truly making America function in this new golden era. Now it's 11:30 on the East Coast, 8:30 on the Golden Coast. Good morning, America. It's always a joy to be with you. I'm Robert McNeely here at the RSBN Live Desk. We'll take a quick commercial break. Stick with us. In an hour and a half, roughly 90 minutes from now, the scheduled press briefing with Karoline Leavitt at the James S. Brady Briefing Room at the White House.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front-row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat Live Show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
As the 1984 campaign for re-election, President Ronald Reagan's great ad said, "It's morning in America," and it's morning in this golden age. 40 years later, as the two citizen servants who became the 40th and then respectively 45th and 47th President of the United States, they really know how to get it done. And in case you missed it from just last week, we're 200 plus days into the second term. An exciting time for not only the administration, but for this American revival that we're experiencing in what President Trump has aptly named America 250, leading up to the 250th birthday of this country on the 4th of July next year, 2026. We kicked all of that off officially in Des Moines, Iowa. If you caught that coverage with yours truly and the classy Christina Loren on site on a rather hot and humid day in Des Moines, Iowa, flanked by local Iowa officials at the Iowa State Fairgrounds, a very famous location in this beautiful country of ours, leading up to a gorgeous sunset and fireworks that went off a little bit too soon. Usually it goes at dusk, but President Trump was on the accelerated program that night, so fireworks went off a little bit early, but never too early to celebrate in this environment, as Karoline Leavitt does on a weekly basis with her MAGA Minute, because we know people are busy and sometimes social media is the best way to go to get all of those updates regarding the successes of this extraordinary administration. We can play that video back for you now.
200 days of winning, and we are just getting started. Let's break it all down in this week's MAGA Minute. As usual, President Trump spent the week answering an unprecedented number of questions from the press, even on the roof, on Squawk Box, and everywhere in between. President Trump signed an executive order establishing a White House task force on the 2028 Summer Olympics, which will take place in Los Angeles, California. The president signed a presidential memorandum directing the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, to require higher education institutions receiving federal financial assistance to be transparent regarding their admissions practices. No more DEI admissions. Tim Cook visited the White House to announce billions more dollars in investments in America. That means more jobs for you and your family. The administration also hosted 100 Purple Heart recipients at the White House to celebrate their incredible sacrifices to our country. The president wrapped up the week by securing a historic peace deal, yet another one, between Armenia and Azerbaijan, ending a decades-long conflict that has killed thousands of people. Also this week, Nancy Pelosi doubled down on the Democrats' desire to mutilate the private parts of our nation's innocent children. HHS announced plans to cut Medicare and Medicaid to any hospital that provides what they call this barbaric practice, gender-affirming care. The Department of Agriculture this week brought the whole cabinet together to celebrate the Great American Farmers Market on the National Mall, reaffirming the Trump administration's commitment to our agricultural community and our farmers. And the president also signed an executive order ensuring fair access to banking for all Americans, putting an end to the debanking practice that we have seen weaponized against Americans based on their political beliefs. I hope you're not tired of winning yet. Tune in next week for another jam-packed MAGA Minute.
And thank you to Karoline Leavitt. You'll see her momentarily, roughly 85 minutes from now, at the scheduled 1 Eastern press briefing at the White House. Thank you to our sponsors at the right side of history. If you are a family member that is on Medicare or turning 65 soon, Chapter is something you should really look into. Call today, don't delay, 833-438-3359. Compare every Medicare plan, because Medicare enrollment is full of misinformation, and the more confused you are, the easier it is to get into the weeds, and it's easy for scammers to take advantage of you or your elderly relatives. Now, if these overpriced plans can make them more money while claiming that they're unbiased. Now, Trump's Department of Justice is looking into all of this, and Medicare fraud at the top of the list for the FBI and the Department of Justice. The three big brokers, they just sued them, in fact, in the United States for allegedly doing exactly that. And who are the victims? They're Americans just like you, the good viewers here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, who truly deserve better. So we've partnered with Chapter to protect you and yours, because we've done our research here. Chapter's advisors make Medicare simple and always put you first. They listen carefully, compare every plan, and devise something that can actually work for you. Knock out your Medicare to-do list with this amazing company. On average, they save people $1,100, in fact. So who doesn't like a savings, especially in 2025? These guys won't push you to choose one or the other based on their own interests. And if you're already on the right plan, they'll just leave it as B. But these are the experts that know how to help you make financial gain. So choose the right Medicare plan for you and yours with trusted guidance from Chapter. Call today. Again, do not delay. 833-438-3359. Give them a call today, and most people wish they call them sooner, just to get on top of all of that, because finances do matter in America. And with all of that as well, you might have a situation with debt, and PDS Debt is the place to go with these fine patriots. pdsdebt.com/RSBN for a secure quote to break down that burden of debt, to start saving today, and to get your free assessment to see if you're eligible for this. And there's no worry on the credit score. There is nothing that can stop you from talking to them and getting a diagnosis within roughly 30 seconds. So pds.com/RSBN, your go-to for debt relief. And we know that credit card debt's been a record number for Americans over the course of the last several years. And with inflation rates as high as they were, still some leftover debt potentially as a result of all of that. So pdsdebt.com/RSBN, your go-to to become debt-free, no credit check. See if you qualify in as little as 30 seconds. Get your free assessment today, pdsdebt.com/RSBN. Thank you for your sponsorship on the right side of history. And we do have some video playback as well regarding the press conference yesterday. President Trump highlighting a number of different items, including that Washington, D.C. is significantly more dangerous than what would have been third world countries and cities over the course of the last few years. Just places like Bogota, Colombia, and also Mexico City, Mexico, Havana, Cuba as well. Still is communist, but that was the communist paradise of years and years. If you go there, beautiful city, but definitely stuck back in the 1960s because in many cases they don't have the ability to buy and purchase things of their own choice. And we know what the Castro brothers did to that beautiful island over the course of several decades of ruling with an iron fist, starting a revolution that claimed freedom but ended up being a crisis and, in fact, a missile crisis that could have ended in a much more frightening way if it wasn't for the leadership of President John F. Kennedy and his cabinet at that time. So we have all of those prepared for you to show you those feedback. And in case you missed that press conference yesterday, President Trump highlighting these very issues in the James S. Brady briefing room.
The murder rate in Washington today is higher than that of Bogota, Colombia, Mexico City, some of the places that you hear about as being the worst places on earth, much higher. This is much higher. The number of car thefts has doubled over the past 5 years, and the number of carjackings has more than tripled. Murders in 2023 reached the highest rate probably ever. They say 25 years, but they don't know what that means because it just goes back 25 years. Can't be worse. Our capital city has been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, roving mobs of wild youth, drugged out maniacs and homeless people. And we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're not going to take it. This dire public safety crisis stems directly from the abject failures of the city's local leadership. The radical left city council adopted no cash bail. By the way, every place in the country where you have no cash bail is a disaster. That's what started the problem in New York, and they don't change it. They don't want to change it. That's what started it in Chicago. I mean, bad politicians started it, bad leadership started it, but that was the one thing that's central, no cash bail. Somebody murders somebody and they're out on no cash bail before the day is out. We're going to end that in Chicago. We're going to change the statute. I spoke with Pam and Todd and everybody. We're going to change the statute, and I'm going to have to get the Republicans to vote because the Democrats are weak on crime, totally weak on crime. The murder rate in Washington today is higher than that of Bogota, Colombia, Mexico City, some of the places that you hear about as being the worst places on earth, much higher. This is much higher. The number of car thefts has doubled over the past 5 years, and the number of carjackings has more than tripled.
The president is correct on all of that, and especially the fact that this cash bail stuff, I mean, what a bunch of nonsense. And the fact that you had these people released by folks like Tish James at the Attorney General's office in New York, who are just more convinced about getting Trump. That's what she ran on, including rogue DAs and people like Fani Willis. And whether it was illegal alien crime or those who have been residents here but perpetuating gang violence, you had that lovely lady, we know her as Holly, we don't know her last name, for protecting her family members, who was sucker punched roughly 10 days ago in Cincinnati, just enjoying a night out on the town when a group of thugs were waiting, which seemed to be racially motivated and driven, to just go and attack white people. It's wrong, whatever direction it goes in. And this is a fact as well. Benjamin Crump, that racist attorney, would have been all over that if it was the other way around. It's just the truth of it. And Holly goes on for an interview with one of our colleagues on another network and simply just says, I don't want this to be a black and white thing. Of course not. But no one should go into our big cities and enjoy a night celebrating a birthday party to, especially a mom of three, a single mom of three, her youngest being 5 years old, and have a man who was released from Fulton County, Georgia, under the purview of Fani Willis. And no, it's not Fawny, it's Fanny. She's ridiculous. She's a joke. Because they wanted to get Trump on illegal charges, on lawfare. It's been proven thanks to people like Pam Bondi and even Alan Dershowitz, a famous liberal Democrat who represented President Trump during the fake impeachment hearings. how many DAs and attorneys generals met with the auto pen over the course of his administration, while a spy balloon went from Montana down to the Palmetto State of South Carolina without anyone doing anything about it, or an open border, as we've discussed extensively on this network. So the individual that sucker punched Holly was, yes, in Fulton County's prison system. He was released for one reason or the other with a rap sheet longer than just about anyone else. And where were the guys in that situation? Simply filming an attack like that? It's time for the men in America to stand up, to be defenders once again. And that's why it's good that this home rule action has been enacted in the federal city of Washington, D.C. to really provide a blueprint. And we know President Trump has been very open about working with both Republicans and Democrats. And ultimately, it's the failure of demon rat leadership in our big cities, whether it's New York or Chicago, Los Angeles, have been the most egregious examples of that. And God forbid if this Mamdani gets elected in New York City. I was just on the phone earlier with a dear friend of ours, the network, Dr. Barry Zitzholtz. He'll be on the network hopefully soon to discuss his new role at the CDC in Atlanta. But there was a shooting that took place there just a few hours ago. And Secretary Robert F. Kennedy surveilling everything that took place there and visiting the CDC in Atlanta. No one should be afraid. No one should be worried about terrorist activity. No one should be worried about this in America's big cities. And it's been, as Judge Jeanine Pirro, you'll hear from her later today, a failure of those either not enforcing the law or being too weak on crime. It goes back to George Gascon, who was peacefully and patriotically removed by vote in the LA County DA's office. Because it's this approach of, we have to be kind and understanding of the criminal. What about the victim impact statements? What about the victim's family members? And that's why I have zero sympathy when I hear these arguments being made that, these people should not be deported, or no, they broke the law. I'm sorry. Tell that to the family members of Laken Riley or Jocelyn Nongiri or Rachel Morin, the 37-year-old mom who was out for a jog and brutally raped and murdered. Their children won't see her again until they're on the other side to go home to our Lord. These are the realities of lawlessness in America thanks to demon rat policies and crazy, inept leadership in America's biggest cities over the course of nearly a century now. It's the modern progressive movement, and really it's not progressive, it's more regressive. It's time to start calling them big government socialists for what they are. They are communists, they are extremists. It is not the Democrat Party of even your father or grandfather. This is something that party's gone. As I've mentioned before, demos is Greek for of the people. Do they really represent the people when they want big government socialism? Then you have them chuckling and laughing, especially in the gerrymandering situation with Governor J.B. Pritzker going on Meet the Press and Stephen Colbert's canceled show and claiming that kindergartners drew the lines and the maps, something he signed into law back in 2021. Makes you think about things. Thank you to our sponsors here on the right side of history. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Ivermectin, mebendazole, now 25% off. So scan that QR code there. And you can also get that additional 10% off with code RSBN10. So it's clearly important to have today because of the bacterial and viral infections that can even go around in the summertime. There's a lot of travel. Americans are hitting the ground running really more than ever before, or at least in the last 4 years since July 2021 with prices going down. So it can mean you might get sick. And with traveling by plane, train, or automobile, there's always a possibility of that. So take these life-saving medications on the road with you and stock up your medicine cabinet, because we know the PBMs that President Trump has signed with that executive order to not play favorites, to allow the free market to give you options. So this online pharmacy truly is your go-to of doctors and nurses and pharmacists who care about you, the American people, with a prescription you can get access to, it's now $11.49 on the East Coast. If you order right now, $11.49 tomorrow morning, right before the noon o'clock lunch hour, you'll get those life-saving medications to your door. So bypass all of the pharmacies down the street from you that might be closed, or simply from the insurance companies that do not want you to have life-saving medication like ivermectin, mebendazole, methylene blue, NAD+, among many others, including antibiotics and emergency medical kits that can literally be the difference between life and death. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, your go-to to protect you and yours. And for a good night's rest, such an important thing this day for your overall health. They say on average get 8 hours of sleep. I'm kind of more of that 6 hours or less. I tried to do more. I'm working on getting there, but I'm like President Trump. I don't need much sleep, and I just keep going like the Energizer Bunny. But, you know, that's why Mike Lindell is there and in business for people to get that good night's rest. The free shipping sale. And my cross, his or hers, it's a replica of what he wears every day, professing his love in his Savior, Jesus Christ. You could do the same as Mr. Mike Lindell does, with saving half off of that. Promo code RSBN. How about those bed sheets, nice and comfortable? Or even those Giza Dream sheets that are fantastic, that cotton coming from the Mediterranean, in fact, arguably the most comfortable in the entire world, produced in Minnesota at his fine manufacturing plants. MyPillow bed sheets going for as low as $24.98, all colors, all sizes. And the multi-use MyPillow 2.0, $9.98. It's $10. It's better than any lunch deal that's out there. So support Mike Lindell and Right Side Broadcasting Network by shopping now at mypillow.com/RSBN. Save with code RSBN. Easy to remember. Over 2,000 different options and items on the website. Mike Lindell, the purveyor of freedom of speech. He is the defender of election integrity. And by God, I hope he will be the next governor of Minnesota. We'll see what happens there. Always a joy to have him on the network. And thank you to Mr. Mike Lindell and MyPillow for sponsoring us on the right side of history. Also, some breaking news from yesterday. Speaking of the 2026 midterms, President Trump giving a glowing endorsement to none other than Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones of the Peach State of Georgia via Truth Social. And he is just touting his highly respected and very popular status as Lieutenant Governor. And Burt Jones is going to be the next governor of the great state of Georgia. A very special place to me in the week leading up to the presidential election win just 8 short months ago, November 5th of 2024. As the first member of the Georgia State Assembly to endorse Donald J. Trump for president back when Burt was a state senator, he was strongly committed to my campaign in 2016, 2020, 2024, and worked tirelessly to help us win. He has been with us from the very beginning, and I know his family well. I've seen Burt tested at the more difficult times of life, but he is a warrior, successful businessman, former SEC winning champion with the Georgia Bulldogs as a football player, known for his toughness, and now as lieutenant governor. Burt has proven the courage and wisdom to deliver on strong results and fight for the incredible, wonderful state and nation. As your next governor, Burt Jones will fight hard to grow the economy, cut taxes and regulations, promote Made in the USA, and champion energy independence and dominance, and continue to secure our southern border, strengthen our military and veterans with law and order, advance election integrity, and always defend the Second Amendment, which is under siege. So, Burt Jones, congratulations, Lieutenant Governor of Georgia, running for governor of the Peach State, has President Donald J. Trump's complete and total endorsement. And we look forward to having the fair and good Lieutenant Governor on the show in the upcoming weeks here to get his take as he officially launches that campaign on August 26th. So the midterms, can you believe it, right around the corner. So I'm sure you'll be, as you're tailgating, especially throughout the SEC states, some of these great candidates out there for constitutional offices, because our governors throughout the Southeast all term limited. So you'll see a lot of new faces in that fight to discuss a number of different issues that are facing their states, especially with so many people who have moved to places like Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, the Carolinas, Florida, the free state of Florida, hosting countless people who have moved on in as a result of the better policies, no tax on that pesky income tax, just to get rid of it altogether. And that's something that Burt Jones has been working hard to do, as the income tax has been reduced in Georgia. But you have Tennessee and Florida, they don't have it at all. So huge competitors in the region. And I could tell you that Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones is quite the fighter, and it's been a pleasure to meet with him and work with him on a number of different issues, as I did run for state representative just last cycle myself in 2024. So a man of his word, a man of character. And I mentioned to him that it was fun to watch him growing up playing for the Georgia Bulldogs, fighting hard in that Sugar Bowl. And I'm sure he'll take that to the state capitol under the Golden Dome in Atlanta, Georgia, as we await for Karoline Leavitt to hold a press briefing roughly an hour and 5 minutes from now. So stick with us. A big day of news here at the network, really dissecting President Trump's home rule move to federalize the federal city in Washington, D.C., and to bring safety and security to create a new blueprint for America's cities. And even people like Chuck Todd praising President Trump, and President Trump praising him via Truth Social for really waking up to what is the truth, no pun intended. And Chuck Todd even mentioning on his podcast that I don't think anybody had this much impact on the country since FDR. Can you believe that? This guy used to be part of MSDNC and Meet the Press and the whole 9 yards. And now he's praising President Trump for his great moves that he has made over the course of 200 plus days in this new administration. As President Trump has pledged that Washington, D.C. will be liberated today. Crime and savagery, filth and scum will disappear, and I will make our capital great again. I'll make these days of ruthlessly killing or hurting innocent people over. I quickly fixed the border, 0 illegals in the last 3 months. D.C. is next. Thank you for your attention to this matter, DJT. And when he signs it, DJT, you know that's him right on Truth Social, as he's someone who he likes to put out those messages personally, and sometimes does have assistants writing there, like the great Dan Scavino, because President Trump is moving at a breakneck pace to secure not only the sovereignty of the United States, but to strengthen the dollar and ultimately put more money into your pocket, the hard-working people of this great nation, as you've seen this on a daily basis from this White House. And with the 2026 midterms coming about, it's so crucial that Republican majorities remain in place in the House and the Senate. And that's why you see states like Texas trying to truly represent that population that has come into the state as a result of terrible policies, like the great state of the Golden State, in fact, California, losing so many residents thanks to the terrible mandates and policies, regulations, and the DEI woke nonsense of Governor Gavin Newsom, among others. And that's the funny thing about this whole gerrymander debate, because first of all, you have a census that has included illegals. So you water down the idea of one vote per one citizen because you're giving financial benefits, has been proven now by what's been discovered in DOJ and all of their research, among other government agencies, that illegals were getting your Social Security, your Medicare, your Medicaid, among other different benefits that you were paying into, free of charge for them. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So you might as well have a new census, a new redistricting, so you could truly represent the constituents that are living there, that are legal residents. It's only common sense. Thank you to Kalshi.com/RSBN for sponsoring us here on the right side of history. Who will President Trump pardon this year? Will Elon Musk create that third-party American party? Scan that QR code now. Bet on all of the crucial questions facing this great nation, domestically and abroad. And now that we're in the dog days of summer, Fall Classic is not too far away. Will the LA Dodgers repeat the World Series championship, or will my Chicago Cubs make that last-minute surge? Man, if Chicago teams could only prevail at the end, unless you're the 90s Bulls, you know, they're a little bit tough towards the end of the season and provide that heartbreak on a regular basis. I hope my Cubs do not do that this season. But it's all those questions, whether it's culture, music, sports, politics, right there for you at Kalshi.com/RSBN. Trade on literally anything. And if you'd like what you see, and maybe if you get some winnings from all that Kalshi, why not donate and share that with Right Side Broadcasting Network? We're rsbnetwork.com/donate. You could text RSBN to 801-801. We deeply appreciate those dollars to help keep us going after a decade of covering the rallies. We're now your go-to live desk. And hey, we go to things like CPAC and the inauguration and catch things like Des Moines, Iowa. So we're still out there in the field getting all of the great commentary from you, the American people, which truly matters the most. Hey, it's fun to interview great musicians and politicians and those so-called celebrities out there, but the true elite, it's you, the American people, who peacefully and patriotically took back your government. As you see images from the campaign trail just last year with President Trump, then Senator, now Vice President J.D. Vance, and those congressmen and senators who boldly and patriotically fought as President Trump survived a would-be assassination attempt. It's been a remarkable year and a half in American history, and it's only just begun. If you like the old school way of donating with a check, you can send that into our address at 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344 in the loveliest village on the plains is Auburn, Alabama, 36830, 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344. Auburn, Alabama, 36830. It is noon o'clock on the East Coast and 9 o'clock in the morning on the Golden Coast. A joy to be with you on this beautiful Tuesday, August 12th. And we are here with you all of the way as we expect Karoline Leavitt in roughly 1 hour from now to hold a press briefing, and then stay tuned after that. So we have Judge Jeanine Pirro giving additional comments with her own press briefing post the White House presser yesterday highlighted by President Trump and some extraordinary comments by the D.C. top cop, the prosecutor put into place by President Trump. And, you know, that's really an amazing thing to think about. As President Trump mentioned, as great as they were on television, Pete Hegseth, Jeanine Pirro, among many others in this administration and within this cabinet, they took massive pay cuts to do what they love, protecting the American people, and putting their families really in the crosshairs when you think about it too. These are brave people. We should be praying for them on a daily basis, and regardless of ideology, praying for all people in government. It's something commanded by the Bible. And if you look at great writings like Archbishop Charles Chaput of the Render Unto Caesar, it's in fact what Jesus said during his passion, that what is yours here on earth is yours, and according to Matthew, what is loosed here on earth will be loosed in heaven. What's retained will remain retained. So his kingdom is not of this earth, but we live in this world with that godly and heavenly mindset. Live in the world, but not of the world. And that's what you see in these citizen servants who begin constant meetings in prayer and fellowship. And you see that as it shines through them, the Holy Spirit, on a daily basis. So pray for their health and their posterity and their family members as well, who have served and given up so much in order to make America great again. But we are joined today earlier by the great Ashley Brassfield of the Daily Caller. She's a Capitol Hill correspondent and a great friend of the network, talking about all the issues of the day, including keeping D.C. safe, to what's going on America's college campuses as Greek life is in full swing. Gen Z is truly Gen free. If you caught any of their videos on social media, an exciting time to watch this American revival. Let's go there live now to Ashley. And welcome back to RSBN's live desk, Ashley Brassfield from the Daily Caller. Tell us some of the stuff you're working on and what's happening in the dog days of summer, this beautiful August. I'm sure lots going on in Washington, D.C.
Yes, well, as you know, Congress is on recess, but the House Oversight Committee has not stopped. So they are still doing testimony for many individuals that were in the Biden administration for the Biden auto pen and mental health decline probe, as well as the Epstein probe that they've now called the Clintons in for, multiple attorney generals across 3 different administrations as well, and even former FBI officials like former special counsel and former director Robert Mueller before the committee. So the Oversight Committee not stopping so far. So keeping me busy, really, with what's going on with those 2 probes, but as well as the Texas Democrats that have fled the state of Texas to avoid the special session going on to look at those redrawing of the district votes. It's another big factor that I'm covering right now.
They headed to my old neck of the woods where I grew up in DuPage County, Illinois, on the dime, apparently, of Governor J.B. Pritzker, who is the heir to the Hyatt fortune, so he got to put them up. Is that really courageous, Ashley, to, regardless of where people fall on this, Republicans gerrymander, Democrats gerrymander, but we know in the Texas state constitution that the state legislature has the right to redraw lines, as each state has a different way of doing these things. Then you have Governor J.B. Pritzker literally going on the soon-to-be-canceled Colbert Show on The Late Show saying a kindergartner drew those lines, and Mr. Colbert putting on that Northwestern Journalism Studies hat for a moment. And I'm amazed because he actually signed that map into law back in 2021.
Well, right. And what happens with these is they happen typically every 10 years. But of course, we saw with COVID is this mass migration of people from states like California to Texas, where they've seen massive population growth. And in the last 5 years, really. So I think this is a special occasion here when the lines need to be redrawn with the upcoming elections in 2026 and 2028. But many of these Texas Democrats, are saying that these Texas lines look like they threw mud at a wall. But as you said, your state of Illinois looks exactly the same way. And, J.B. Pritzker was asked about this by, I want to say it was on the CBS or NBC, which is typically their friendly media, but he couldn't even give them an answer as to why he felt like that the lines were not fair, or, when the argument was thrown back in his face that they continue to keep using for Texas Democrats. But as you said, they've flown to Illinois. The question here being, who's putting them up? Where are these expenses coming from? And, I think the Republicans in Texas are going to keep a very close eye on this in regards to expenses. They're looking at bribery laws that have been, possibly, they're not following currently with it from the state. Even one of the Texas Democrats said that they're using the House Democratic Caucus to pay for this. So where is the money coming from? That's the question.
And does it not dilute voters' full ability? It's one citizen, one vote. With the census, as you mentioned, Ashley, it's actually diluted because you have illegals that are counted for in these districts. So they do not have the right to vote. But we've seen now, it's been exposed that they were receiving federal funding in the form of Social Security benefits, Medicaid benefits, Medicare benefits under the auto pen administration.
Right. Well, this has been talked about since, I want to say, October of 2024. Current Vice President J.D. Vance brought this up on his interview with Joe Rogan. But we're even seeing this in states like California, that it's gone downhill, where taxpayer dollars are being expensed for illegal aliens, and voters need to be, considered U.S. citizens that are law-abiding, should be considered and on top of these illegal immigrants that have come into the country, broken our laws. And that's exactly what these politicians aren't doing. They're not considering the Texas people. Illinois has undermined their voters, as well as California, where Gavin Newsom has been very vocal about this. And we've seen the downhill trajectory of his state since then, and even him cleaning up many of the homeless people in San Francisco, and making remarks now that Donald Trump has decided he wants to clean up the capital of the United States.
And the bigger concern with that safety, making America safe again, you have Kristi Noem, the secretary over at the Department of Homeland Security, going to DuPage County after those Texas Democrats were there just west of Chicago, and showing all of the illegal weapons that federal, state, and local law enforcement able to obtain from these criminals, all the fentanyl and the poisoning that can happen that's just in the Chicago metro area. But what are some of your thoughts and colleagues' thoughts specifically in Washington regarding President Trump's use of home rule for the federal city?
Right. Well, I actually live in the neighborhood that there was an incident this weekend. It was brought up in his news conference yesterday, which he pointed out many areas of D.C. that have seen trouble, many even Democrat congressional leaders that have actually been victims of crime in the city. We reached out to them yesterday, but like I said, I live in the area. It happened right outside my apartment that this happened this weekend, where a shot was fired, and many of these young kids that group together, typically African American, that come into the city in large groups that cause much of the trouble. And we saw Jeanine Pirro bring this up, that she can only do so much because of the laws currently in place. So, I think that many of these journalists want to take what President Trump said, run with it in the other direction. We don't need this much police force in the nation's capital, but it's, cleaning up DC is very important. Being safe. I'm a female in my 20s. I want to feel safe coming to work, and I don't understand why other media outlets on the left, even specifically, have such a big problem with this, having some police presence to up the ante a little bit. And like we saw Muriel Bowser, I think what she actually meant to say yesterday was thank you, to take the city back from criminals and to see the crime rate go down. We actually saw a commissioner be fired because they were altering crime statistics recently. So, the media can continue to ignore this. Of course, we are not. But I think it was something specifically within our office located in DC that we'd like to hear, because we want to feel safe, especially on places like the metro and just walking around the city.
And that was my question during President Trump's press conference yesterday, as he had 3,500 police officers. Are they double counting some in this regard? Maybe the U.S. Parks Police, which is one of the oldest law enforcement agencies, actually started by the father of our country, President and General George Washington. But I'm surprised by this number of police officers that are allegedly on the beat, and Muriel Bowser and the leadership there clearly cannot take reins of it. So I'm excited to see someone like a Terry Cole step in and give his expertise in something that needs to be solved rather quickly.
Right. Well, I think we're seeing that currently. There's an they've upped the police presence within the city. We've seen it, whether it be FBI, DEA is another one that's been specifically seen. But I think, there's the comment about it from the left is they don't want to see a police state from Donald Trump. But at the same time, crime has significantly continued throughout the city, and it has occurred in major cities across the USA. And they're saying that the president is threatening to go into those cities. Obviously, DC is not a state, so the president has a little bit more significant power within the district because of this. But, I mean, as many young people, like we saw the Doge staffer that got attacked, as well as an intern that got killed in DuPont Circle. And even in DuPont Circle during the World Pride, they tried to shut the Park Service specifically tried to shut the circle down. It was reopened at the request of Mayor Bowser. And of course, there were shootings that occurred that same weekend. So, to say and sweep it off as though it's not a problem is wrong in all circumstances, in my opinion.
And viewers, just a note today, after this wonderful interview, and then, of course, Karoline Leavitt's press conference today, there will be a press conference live here at Right Side Broadcasting Network with the great Judge Jeanine Pirro, who is the top cop, the top prosecutor in D.C., thanks to President Trump's nomination. And we heard some of her comments yesterday, as you alluded to, Ashley, regarding that these teenagers, it's really the law within the municipal code in Washington, D.C. that's not prosecuting these people. You have 13, 14-year-olds carjacking, alleged robbery and attempted murder with knives, guns, and very dangerous weapons. We've seen all of that in the federal city. But then a lot of times it's probation, or you're let off as a juvenile. Should they not be convicted or at least charged as adults in these cases?
Right. Well, this is a big problem where I live. I see them, running around kind of antically throughout the city, causing problems. Many people have caught them on video even. But a lot of these parents, they don't do anything about this. So if you put them in a juvenile program, and they won't even put them in the youth programs within the city to fix this. So it really is a systemic problem when it comes to many of these communities, allowing these kids to do this. And therefore, upping the ante specifically within Navy Yard. That's what happened this weekend. So that's a big problem with youth crime within the city, and it is a systemic issue. But that would require the Congress to change the laws, as Jeanine Pirro said. So that obviously takes time. They're currently in recess right now, but we have seen, the Oversight Committee has some jurisdiction over this as well, and they're stepping up to hold a hearing, and even invited the mayor of DC to come and speak at that. So that's going to be happening in September once recess is complete. So hopefully we'll see something occur in the next month. I think this is going to be a continuing topic to see what the president does with what the power he holds.
And the mayor, Muriel Bowser, having glowing words in terms for Judge Jeanine Pirro, as well as President Trump mentioning that she is a good person. I thought it was rather kind words, considering we know that she did not accept that federal help on J6, and we know what that led to. So maybe as a result, changing her tune, because this is not a partisan issue. It's public safety is something that should not be determined simply by a zip code or demographic backgrounds. Everyone wants to be safe in America, and frankly, like you're working in the federal city, and you should feel safe on a daily basis, as should the residents who have been there for countless years.
Absolutely. I think being our nation's capital and having visitors come and visit, President Trump was spot on with this. We should have the obligation to American citizens to feel safe within their own country, domestically, and even visitors that come and see the city. It's a beautiful place to come. And the harm that comes from many of these criminals, it should be, cracked down on. And that goes for across the country and in major cities. And it's up to politicians and the federal government to do that, in my opinion.
For the general posterity, it's really the reason why we have government in the first place. It's public safety. Now let's go to the Southeastern Conference, maybe talk a little bit about your alma mater, the University of South Carolina, because I'm getting a hit from all of this Greek life and these great videos, especially the sorority ladies that are putting out all of these pro-America, pro-family, pro-friendship videos. It's nice to see that on the college campuses.
Absolutely. With the SEC, that's never changed, in my opinion, and now it's just being publicized. The dancing videos with the sorority girls is kind of something that they've trademarked over the years. It's just getting a lot of publicity due to the fact that, they're using American flags, doing these dances and things like that. And it is a lot of fun. SEC schools, I think, are a great example. And even football games, those are the places that I felt the most patriotic. They have great flyovers. If you've ever been to the University of Tennessee, they've had B-2 bombers fly over. It's really incredible. It's very patriotic. Everyone's standing for the anthem. That's just the culture of the South, and specifically at South Carolina, my alma mater. Go Gamecocks, by the way. And hopefully we're going to have a good season coming up. But very excited. And if anybody has the opportunity to ever go to an SEC football game, I highly encourage it. It's a lot of fun. Like I said, patriotic, and you're just going to you're going to have a good time. There's a lot of good people there.
It just matters more in the SEC. There's no question about that. And what do you think about all this social commentary on Sydney Sweeney? I mean, she simply did an ad for American Eagle, and I'm dating myself, but I used to wear those jeans way back in the day. I thought it was a good ad. I don't know why all these people are bringing up the fact that, it's insulting because they don't go to the gym or because she's blonde. Is that not, in a weird way, reverse discrimination?
Right. Well, it's just, as President Trump said, it's the hottest ad. I agree. We saw this with, even on the business side, American Eagle stock shot up, Bobby. It was incredible. I think that shows that the company itself did something right. The country agreed with it because the market showed that. Like you said, I'm dating myself too, but I also wore those jeans. But what a comeback for a company as well. We saw this kind of with Abercrombie. They remarketed. But for Sydney Sweeney herself, that's like just a true American girl right there. Blonde hair, blue-eyed. She's stunning. But liberals can't stand that, obviously. And many of the people that are pushing back, for saying that she has great genes, Jeans. It's a silly pun that was kind of used in previous advertisements before, but it's a great commercial in my opinion. And, I even loved that they backed her. That was something we wouldn't have seen like 2 or 3 years ago, Bobby. So that's something that I found that was encouraging, that the culture is changing back to more of a normal Americana viewpoint.
And journalism is better because Ashley Brassfield is involved, and she has great genes too. It's the Capitol Hill correspondent from the Daily Caller.
I wish I was in jeans right now.
And it's hey, you never know. It's with these desks. You can actually wear jeans at times when you're on the anchor desk. But I will not disclose exactly my brand today. Always a joy to have you on RSBN's live desk. It's Ashley Brassfield with the Daily Caller. We'll see you very soon. You have a great week.
Thank you. You as well.
Always a joy having Ashley on the right side of history to give us eyes and ears into the nation's capital, what's taking place there. And just like we pray and wish her well, being safe in the federal city, doing due diligence to bring you all of these relevant and incredible stories, we want you to enjoy the nation's capital, and God willing, with the home rule enacted by President Trump, you will have just that. As we thank our sponsors on the right side of history, angelpaste.com. Really, the Miracle Cream is the go-to, among other great items with an immunity boosting vitamin C, non-GMO, no chemical used in these great products. Also a natural mosquito repellent and facial spray to paint the town red. Guys and gals, this is your go-to. And gentlemen out there, I was just on a great fishing trip, and I can tell you I use this product and it does not lose my grip when it comes to carrying that tackle box. So be sure to get your amazing products. The miracle that is angelpaste.com. Christian owned. They hire veterans. They're out of Spring, Texas, in the beautiful Houston Metroplex off of the Gulf of America. Angelpaste.com. Experience the miracle today. And make sure that you are protecting your health with the great Cove Pure, because you can't have this fluoride, these pesticides, these chemicals within the water supply. I mean, it's up to you. If you want to brush your teeth with sodium fluoride, that's in most of our toothpaste, that's up to you, but you shouldn't have to drink it. Now, Utah and Florida passing legislation that bans fluoride in the water supply. And why are these states suddenly doing a massive U-turn on fluoride? It's because people like RFK Jr. pointed out years ago that fluoride has been in the system for a while the government was not telling the truth, but now admitting to the fact that fluoride leads to lower IQ. In fact, 2 or more points dropping for children's IQ scores if they're ingesting this on a regular basis. Now, a study done by JAMA Pediatrics, so a top medical journal, where scientists found that your consumption of fluoride could be 2 milligrams per liter of water. So that's every glass that you're taking in. Think about that. That's rather high content in addition to the other chemicals that can be there. So their clear wave water system technology is certified to remove up to 99.9% of the bad things, particles, including fluoride, in the water supply. These pharmaceuticals that are leaking out, forever chemicals, get filtered right out so you can have that pure water. If you go to covepure.com/RSBN right now, you can get $200 off of this great system that can protect you and yours from what could be deadly chemicals or those harmful fluoride elements that can lead to lowering of IQ and test scores for children out there. So make sure you have this on your countertop. I have a water purification reverse osmosis system myself to remain healthy. covepure.com/RSBN. Get $200 off now. Thank you for your sponsorship on the right side of history. And we're getting close towards the bottom of the hour. At the top of the hour, we'll have Karoline Leavitt holding a press briefing at 1 Eastern. Following that, another stream of Jeanine Pirro, the D.C. top prosecutor, the top cop, in fact, in many ways, making the federal city safe again, and some further comments that she shared at the press briefing yesterday with President Trump will be enjoyed at the 2 o'clock hour. So don't miss a jam-packed afternoon of your live desk here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. I'm Robert McNeely. We'll take a quick commercial break and stick with us as we get ready for the superstar, Karoline Leavitt.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network on this beautiful Tuesday, August 12th. We hope that you are enjoying what is usually a busy time of year with the students returning to school, whether it be K through 12, all the way to college, as we see the return of those to Auburn University just down the street from our studios. But we await Karoline Leavitt to hold a press briefing from the James S. Brady briefing room at the White House at the top of the hour. And this was announced just yesterday at the conclusion of the press briefing, in case you missed it, with President Trump, that was highlighting keeping the federal city safe, invoking home rule, as the federal government does have over the jurisdiction of the federal city or District of Columbia, as it should be, as it was constitutionally designed. And it's something that we've seen Democrats want to change over the course of the last couple of years, to make it a state, to add 2 United States senators, something that was once policy of the Republican Party, bringing Puerto Rico into statehood, to add another 2 senators. So they're looking at wanting to add 4 senators on top of stacking the Supreme Court, something FDR wanted to do. And ultimately, that's what the Demon Rat playbook is, going back to Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And although he was a great leader in so many ways, FDR was a big government president, progressive. But, you know, this whole thing progressive now, we really should start calling them out for what they are. Like, Mom Donnie is a full-blown communist, and over 90%, I would argue, of elected demon rats happen to be big government socialists. If you disagree, feel free to write. Feedback at rsbn.tv. We'd love your take on that, because I think that's at the bottom, or at the end of the day, you have to get really into the weeds and explain what these people want you to do. It's a fascist takeover of private property. They want government control. It's that simple. You have someone like Mamdani in New York City who wants to take over the farmers markets on Saturdays. Some of the things that are the most affordable things in the most expensive city in the United States. Why would you want government to take over farmers markets, and furthermore harming farmers, agricultural lines and supplies, and good quality food and drink going to the residents of the 5 boroughs? It beats me, but it's all about control. And I think they proved that through the gerrymandering debate that took place over the course of the last week or so in my former neck of the woods where I grew up. These demon rats from Texas ran away and stayed on the dime of the Hyatt Hotel heir, Governor Jelly Belly Pritzker, in order to run away from their duties. And my thing is this: if you're an elected official, why run away from your constituents? Regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, you should stand there and make your case, especially when you're in the state legislature. In fact, when you make that argument and that deliberation, you might, like the great Secretary Marco Rubio mentioned when he was a United States Senator, actually change someone's mind in that process and then give them the opportunity to flip their vote, because they are bodies meant to lecture and to sway public opinion, doing so in a peaceful and patriotic manner. In fact, the United States Senate, arguably once the greatest modern body for that dialogue and debate to take place. At least it once was. But that's the whole thing about the Democrat Party as it exists now. And it's not demos, the Greek translation of the people. It's truly a big government socialist party now. It's not your grandfather's Democrat Party, because they want to federalize everything. In turn, they hate the Bill of Rights. They don't want the 10th Amendment, states' rights. They don't want that to exist. They don't want the Department of Education to go away, because their government lobbyist overlords are in bed with the teachers' union. It's destroyed places like the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois as a whole. And then you have them going on late night shows like the canceled Stephen Colbert show, The Late Show. There was once really an American institution under David Letterman, but Colbert actually put on that hat of this Northwestern journalism degree and asked the governor of Illinois, what's up with these maps? You're willing to criticize Texas, but what about the worst gerrymandered maps in America, Illinois? He said, oh, a kindergartner drew that. That was his answer. A kindergartner drew that. The map that then he signed into law back in 2021. They don't like the idea that states all operate differently in the constitutional parameters of Republican government, not of the party. Republican meaning law and order. Something so crucial to the way we do things here in America. And if you go back to our founding documents and to the quotes of our great founding fathers, they talked on this very topic of Republican governance versus pure democracy, and how democracy can turn into a tyrannical regime of 51% telling the other 49 just how to do everything. You need checks and balances, because not only did they fear in Article 2 a king, therefore making a president of a constitutional republic, but in Article 1 they also, which is not talked about a lot, they feared an overreaching legislative branch. And I think that's what you can argue right now. And if you have a difference of opinion, again, please feel free to write into the show, feedback@rsbn.tv. But I think what we're experiencing right now is not necessarily an imperial presidency that has been argued over the course of the last 40 years, but more of this imperial Congress, people that have stayed in office for the amount of my lifetime, for example. People like the Palestinian Senator, Chuck Schumer, who will not call out Mamdani, who will not call out his potential primary opponent, AOC, for their far-left big government socialist policies, but rather remain silent on it and then help fund organizations that are sympathizers of Palestinian and terrorist movements throughout the world. It's a bizarre time to live, but we are in a golden era, and you were born for such a time as this. So remaining engaged in the process will make a massive difference in the weeks, months, and years to come. And Mr. Director, that sponsor one more time. I'd like to thank our sponsors here on Right Side Broadcasting Network, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Really your go-to for keeping your family healthy. You have ivermectin, mebendazole, now 25% off. You can also use that code RSBN10 that we've been running here at the network for that additional 10% off. Because whether it's stocking your medicine cabinet or taking these life-saving essentials on the road with you, it helps to make sure that you don't get a serious illness this summer, whether it's a bacterial or viral infection. Now, if you want the freedom to choose your treatment, this is truly your online go-to, because you don't have a doctor who will prescribe it. You could go right to All Family Pharmacy at allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. They cover and carry the medications many providers refuse, like ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, mebendazole, methylene blue, NAD+, among many, many more. In fact, 200 plus essential medications, emergency medical kits, and antibiotics that can be life-saving for you. Just request the medication online, and once approved by your doctor, you can get that within 24 hours, and at max 2 to 3 days right to your doorstep. So imagine ordering at 12:32 Eastern right now and having that arrive in a few short hours. Now their goal is simple: to put health back into your hands and to make America healthy again, because if you need the treatment, you shouldn't have to jump through hoops to get it. And President Trump signed that executive order with PBMs to make sure that the insurance companies aren't double dipping with other pharmacies. That's the truth in some cases across America, that insurance companies actually own those pharmacies and they won't prescribe this life-saving medication. It seems like Big Pharma has taken over in certain areas. So again, RSBN 10, your go-to guide for 10% off, with now an additional 25% off of ivermectin and mebendazole specifically, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. And now Chapter, this is one of our newer sponsors here at the network. If you or a family member is approaching 65 and you're having that Medicare discussion, call today, don't delay. The great patriots at Chapter can help you sort all these things out. 833-438-3359. Compare every Medicare plan. Have options. Don't feel forced to make a decision with that can be full of misinformation at times. And the more confused you are, the easier it is for scammers to steer you in an overpriced direction that is claiming they're unbiased, but truly they're not. Making more money off of you, the hardworking American people, as you move towards retirement. Now, Trump's Department of Justice just sued 3 of the biggest brokers in America for just that. Allegedly, of course, they are innocent before proven guilty, but the victims are Americans like you, the good viewers here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. So we partnered with Chapter because we did our research, and Chapter's advisors make Medicare simple and always put you first. They listen carefully, compare every plan, and help you get the most on savings. In fact, the average savings they have per customer, $1,100. So choose the right Medicare plan for you and yours. If you are 65 or approaching that number, give them a call today. Again, don't delay. Chapter, knock out your Medicare to-do list, 833-438-3359. Thank you for your sponsorship on the right side of history. As we are getting ready to dive into another breaking news press briefing from the James S. Brady briefing room at the White House. It was jam-packed yesterday for the President of the United States, flanked by great members of his cabinet, including but not limited to SecDef Pete Hegseth and also Doug Burgum at Interior, and the great Attorney General Pam Bondi, Kash Patel at the FBI, and Jeanine Pirro, the D.C. top prosecutor, who will be doing a press conference of her own at 2 o'clock Eastern. So stay tuned for all of that and the breaking news that can come from either of these press conferences here at your go-to live desk at Right Side Broadcasting Network. Now, in case you missed yesterday, President Trump had some highlights from that press briefing, and we have video playback of that was shown in the first hour of our broadcast today, but also that President Trump did showcase on Truth Social for your viewing pleasure.
The murder rate in Washington today is higher than that of Bogota, Colombia, Mexico City, some of the places that you hear about as being the worst places on earth, much higher. This is much higher. The number of car thefts has doubled over the past 5 years, and the number of carjackings has more than tripled. Murders in 2023 reached the highest rate probably ever. They say 25 years, but they don't know what that means because it just goes back 25 years. Can't be worse. Our capital city has been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals, roving mobs of wild youth, drugged out maniacs and homeless people, and we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're not going to take it. This dire public safety crisis stems directly from the abject failures of the city's local leadership. The radical left city council adopted no cash bail. By the way, every place in the country where you have no cash bail is a disaster. That's what started the problem in New York, and they don't change it. They don't want to change it. That's what started it in Chicago. I mean, bad politicians started it, bad leadership started it, but that was the one thing that's central, no cash bail. Somebody murders somebody and they're out on no cash bail before the day is out. We're going to end that in Chicago. We're going to change the statute. I spoke with Pam and Todd and everybody. We're going to change the statute, and I'm going to have to get the Republicans to vote because the Democrats are weak on crime, totally weak on crime. The murder rate in Washington today is higher than that of Bogota, Colombia, Mexico City, some of the places that you hear about as being the worst places on earth, much higher. This is much higher. The number of car thefts has doubled over the past 5 years, and the number of carjackings has more than tripled.
And Mayor Brandon Johnson of Chicago had really a ridiculous rebuke of that, claiming that Chicago is actually safe and saying that the Trump administration is actually withholding specific funds in regards to public safety. But we know that that mayor is someone who has a staff of 150 police officers for him and the First Lady of Chicago. And he'd rather have that security detail because of how dangerous the city has become. instead of putting those resources on with boots on the ground to protect the great residents of the second city. And he has someone who has under a 10% approval rating. So it's a sinking ship for people like Brandon Johnson and J.B. Pritzker, Gavin Newsom, Kathy Hochul, and God forbid Mamdani if he got into New York City. What a terrible thing that would be for this great nation and the largest city in the United States, the Big Apple. Now, yes, D.C. is out of control. The crime is terrible there, as the White House has specified Washington, D.C. should be the symbol of pride and American patriotism for the American people. They should not fear coming to visit their federal city, to meet with their elected representatives, or to enjoy the museums and the history and all that has taken place to honor this great nation in the District of Columbia. Now, unfortunately, fake news journalists and politicians go out of their way to claim otherwise. And the reality is that our nation's capital is anything but safe. So here are the facts. In 2024, Washington, D.C. saw a homicide rate of 27.3 residents per the 100,000 residents mark. That was the fourth highest homicide rate in the entire country, nearly 6 times that of New York City and higher than Atlanta, Chicago, and Compton, just outside of Los Angeles. Now in Washington, D.C., if it was a state, it would have the highest homicide rate of any state in the nation. In 2012 alone, the homicide rate in Washington, D.C. was just 13.9 per 100,000 residents, so skyrocketing in roughly 13 years. DC's murder rate is roughly 3 times higher than that of Islamabad, Pakistan, and 18 times higher than that of communist-run Cuba. You think of these places and how run down they are, with virtually no economic opportunity for those, especially minorities and women, and they are safer than our nation's capital. Doesn't seem right. The number of juveniles arrested in D.C. has gone up every year since 2020, and many of whom have had prior arrests for violent crimes. There were 29,348 crimes reported in the federal city last year, including 3,469 violent crimes, over 1,000 assaults with a dangerous weapon, 2,113 robberies, and over 5,000 motor vehicle incidents and thefts. So far in 2025, there have already been 1,600 violent crimes reported, nearly 16,000 total crimes in Washington, D.C. that have simply been reported, and there have been nearly 100 homicides, including fatal shootings of innocent civilians like 3-year-old Honesty Cheadle and 21-year-old Capitol Hill intern Eric Tarpian Jancham. It should not be happening in this great federal city of ours. Vehicle theft in Washington, D.C. is more than 3 times the national average. Carjackings increasing 547% between 2018 and 2023. And in 2024, there were triple the number of carjackings compared to 2019. These statistics are not only troubling on their own, but they also likely are significantly understating the level of what Washington, D.C. is actually at. Believe it or not, Metro Police Department is accused of actually doctoring and cooking the books when it comes to making the crime statistics sound better than they actually are. Many residents don't feel safe, and more than half of all violent crime in the United States goes unreported, which is shocking. Even local news, WUSA-TV, in Washington, D.C., saying that the residents voice frustration over rising violence, questioning police statistics, and demanding real action to make neighborhoods feel safe again. This is something that has been on the mind of this administration. We saw earlier this year, too, with the paid protesters, and well, actually, really, you can't call them protesters. They're rioters. They are thugs that were flying Mexican flags in Los Angeles, who clearly did not know their history regarding the Mexican-American War, let alone just simply people like to see the world burn and are willing to get paid to do just that. President Trump having to send in federal aid and the National Guard in order to restore order because Karen Bass and J.B. Pritzker and Gavin Newsom, specifically in California, do not care to do just that. In fact, that's probably the worst people in America right now. The mayors, Karen Bass of LA, Brandon Johnson of Chicago, Eric Adams, he's trying, but hopefully we don't end up having a communist in New York City in the Big Apple in the coming months. But the governors too, Kathy Hochul in New York, J.B. Pritzker in Illinois, and Gavin Newsom in California do not care about law and order, but rather the DEI, woke policies, and simply thinking about running for president. It's those kinds of people that the founding fathers warned us about and that we just avoided in a big way. People like Kamala Harris, the failed border czar, who literally laughed during an interview with Lester Holt saying, I haven't been to Europe, so what's the big deal about not being at the border? You were mandated by the President of the United States, otherwise known as Autopen at the time, to go down there and secure the border. If the Biden administration simply did not touch what the Trump administration had done in the first term, people would still be living with us today. Family members would not have empty seats at their tables as we approach the holiday season. And they have to live and think about that until they're called home to heaven to see their loved ones who are lost in such a violent and egregious manner. And regardless if it's illegal alien crime or those who are residents perpetuating this gang activity, it's truly Liberation Week in Washington, D.C. as a result of President Trump's swift action on invoking home rule in the federal city. Now, he took this bold executive action to liberate Washington, D.C. just yesterday from the cesspool of crime and homelessness it has become after decades of unilateral Democrat leadership. President Trump outlining this plan just yesterday morning, according to the White House, stating that the murder rate in Washington, D.C. is higher than Bogota, Colombia, also has doubled over the past 5 years. And more than doubling, the carjackings have tripled over the course of this time since 2018. President Trump's actions to end the lawlessness is welcome news for the American people and the residents and visitors alike. As we break all of that down, we're also grateful for our amazing sponsors here at Right Side Broadcasting Network, including pdsdebt.com/RSBN. Did you know that credit card debt's skyrocketing over the course of the last several years? So if you have no credit score that you want revealed, there's none required here, so you could break free from that debt, because it's tough sometimes. It's a couple of poor financial decisions here or there, or simply the inflation that we experience with the Biden administration and the cost of goods going up over the course of the last 4 years. Thank God we're on the other end of that, with gas and egg prices, among other things, coming down. But break free from the debt, start saving today, and see if you qualify in 30 seconds. It's all it takes. Reach out to my friends at pdsdebt.com/RSBN. Get your free assessment of this extraordinary patriotic company and make a plan for yourself to get rid of that stress of financial debt. Again, pdsdebt.com/RSBN. Get your free assessment today. It only takes 30 seconds with a secure free quote and custom options to find yourself in financial freedom, as this country is moving that direction with President Trump's leadership, bringing in billions of dollars with the tariffs, if not going into the trillions in the next few weeks, months, and years with incredible trade deals. Now, the mayor seems not to have enough control of the activities that are arising, according to a resident in Washington, D.C., regarding all of the violent crime that has taken place, whose 3-year-old granddaughter was shot and killed in Washington, D.C., something that families should never, ever have to deal with. This other resident also saying that this is not a partisan issue. This is a public safety issue here in Washington, D.C., according to an advisory neighborhood commissioner. Now, if it's going to stop the crime, then yeah, it's necessary, according to another resident. We got caught in the middle of a drive-by shooting, so that was horrible. They need to do more about juvenile crime. I think it's because they keep letting them go. No deterrent. This is another D.C. resident. During the campaign, President Trump promised to make our capital city safe and beautiful for all Americans. And he is delivering on just that on a daily basis as we await roughly 10 or so minutes from now a scheduled press briefing with Karoline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, the GOAT, the superstar, as President Trump puts it. We always enjoy getting the up-to-date information directly from the James Brady briefing room at the White House. And we look forward to bringing you that live momentarily. On the other end at 2 o'clock Eastern, we'll have another stream of Jeanine Pirro's press conference. She had a lot to say yesterday with the president discussing the laws that have either failed or are simply not enforced or that need to be changed within the metropolitan system of the municipality of Washington, D.C. So we're honored to bring you all of that here as your go-to live desk at Right Side Broadcasting Network. In the meantime, we'll take a quick commercial break for our sponsors and be back with you on the other end. So don't change that channel here at Right Side Broadcasting Network.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
Welcome back to Right Side Broadcasting Network as the James S. Brady briefing room fills up. Always exciting to see that taking place as trillions of dollars are being taken in by tariffs here in the United States. It has been incredible for our country, its stock market, its general wealth, and just about everything else. It has been proven that even at this late stage, tariffs have not caused inflation or any other problems for America, other than massive amounts of cash pouring into our Treasury's coffers. Also, it has been shown that, for the most part, consumers aren't even paying these tariffs. It is mostly companies and governments, many of them foreign, picking up the tabs. But David Solomon and Goldman Sachs refuse to give credit where credit is due. They made a bad prediction a long time ago on both the market repercussion and the tariffs themselves, and they were wrong, just like they were wrong about so much else. I think that David should go out and get himself a new economist, or maybe he ought to just focus on being a DJ and not bother running any major financial institution. That just from President Trump recently. Over the course of the last couple of hours, he also called out again Jerome Too Late Powell and his refusal to reduce those rates that are so crucially needed at this time. Also breaking news that President Trump will be at the Kennedy Center tomorrow on Wednesday, doing the tremendous work to make America's art scene great again, a building that needs to be or go through extensive repairs, but a wonderful place that has honored the Kennedy family and the legacy of the late, great John Fitzgerald Kennedy. So we look forward to that as we are 200 days plus into this new administration. And in case you don't subscribe to it, you should. It's the MAGA Minute that comes every single week, usually on Friday afternoons or evenings, by Karoline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, detailing the important nature of what's going on at your White House at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. In case you missed last week, we could play that now for you before this press briefing.
100 days of winning, and we are just getting started. Let's break it all down in this week's MAGA Minute. As usual, President Trump spent the week answering an unprecedented number of questions from the press, even on the roof, on Squawk Box, and everywhere in between. President Trump signed an executive order establishing a White House task force on the 2028 Summer Olympics, which will take place in Los Angeles, California. The president signed a presidential memorandum directing the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, to require higher education institutions receiving federal financial assistance to be transparent regarding their admissions practices. No more DEI admissions. Tim Cook visited the White House to announce billions more dollars in investments in America. That means more jobs for you and your family. The administration also hosted 100 Purple Heart recipients at the White House to celebrate their incredible sacrifices to our country. The president wrapped up the week by securing a historic peace deal, yet another one, between Armenia and Azerbaijan, ending a decades-long conflict that has killed thousands of people. Also this week, Nancy Pelosi doubled down on the Democrats' desire to mutilate the private parts of our nation's innocent children. HHS announced plans to cut Medicare and Medicaid to any hospital that provides what they call this barbaric practice, gender-affirming care. The Department of Agriculture this week brought the whole cabinet together to celebrate the Great American Farmers Market on the National Mall, reaffirming the Trump administration's commitment to our agricultural community and our farmers. And the president also signed an executive order ensuring fair access to banking for all Americans, putting an end to the debanking practice that we have seen weaponized against Americans based on their political beliefs. I hope you're not tired of winning yet. Tune in next week for another jam-packed MAGA Minute.
Always wonderful to hear from the superstar, Karoline Leavitt. We'll see her momentarily from the podium there at the Brady briefing room at the White House from the West Wing. Now, you want freedom to choose not only your bodily autonomy and your groceries and to know where things are coming from, especially country or source of origin, but how about the medications that are life-saving? And you might have a doctor who won't prescribe it. It's happened to us here in America with the PBMs and the insurance companies that actually double dip and run pharmacies as well. That's why allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN is fighting for you with ivermectin and mebendazole. Now 25% off. You can use code RSBN10 in order to make all of those great savings happen for you. So whether it's on the road or stocking up your medicine cabinet, these medications provided like ivermectin, mebendazole, hydrochloroquine, methylene blue, NAD+, among 200 essential medications, antibiotics, antivirals, and more, they can literally be prescribed for you in a matter of 24 hours, and on the late end, get them 2 to 3 days after ordering. So it's nearly 1 o'clock on the East Coast. Imagine having these life-saving medications that are needed with a prescription, but right to your doorstep without the hassle that you might have dealt with in the past. Their goal is simple: to put your health priorities back on the docket for you and into your hands, because you need the treatment. You shouldn't have to go through leaps and bounds and jump through hoops in order to get there. With All Family Pharmacy, you keep the essentials on hand, and really being unprepared in 2025 is no longer an option, because what we've seen in our lifetime is rather extraordinary. So scan that QR code now, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. And speaking of health, really all starts with a good night's sleep. And the man behind the mission of doing just that, Mr. Mike Lindell. The free shipping sale, the master marketer, as President Trump has put it, back at the Warren Township 100 Days celebration. The My Cross, you could save 50% on the male or female version of the cross that Mike Lindell wears. We talk about his personal story that is not only all-American, but such a Christian story of redemption and forgiveness. MyPillow also offers great bed sheets as low as $24.98, all sizes, all colors, including those Giza Dream Sheets from the Mediterranean. That cotton all produced and manufactured here in the great state of Minnesota at the factories of MyPillow. Multi-use MyPillow 2.0 under $10, $9.98. Think about that. What a deal for a pillow to rest your head on. Traditional colors, or In God We Trust, or With God All Things Are Possible. Great reminders as you lay your head to rest at night in this golden era of America. MyPillow.com/RSBN. You can support us through this great organization and the great Mike Lindell as he works to defend free speech and election integrity. Call today. Don't delay. Over 2,000 products, in fact, on the website. 800-836-7566. 800-836-7566. I can tell you these are great people, and having helped set up their True Social accounts a few years ago, his staff is extraordinary. Mike Lindell, truly a prince of a man, and someone who deeply cares about this country and putting out a quality product as it should be. Mike Lindell, MyPillow, thank you for your sponsorship on the right side of history. And if you're watching, sir, my regards to your extraordinary staff who is helping America sleep better again. And that's really the core thing here, health. Making America healthy again. It was a traditional liberal Democrat, RFK Jr., last August at that Phoenix rally of Turning Point USA and Turning Point Action. Nothing like a Turning Point conference or a Turning Point event where Mr. Kennedy endorsed President Donald Trump, once rivals in a sense, running for that same office, coming together and uniting the MAGA and MAGA movement to really restore health in this country. And is it great to see places like Steak and Shake? They cook with beef tallow now, all their fries and their burgers. So when you want to go out and get some fast food, you don't have to worry about compromising health like you once did in the past. And it's great to see the private and public partnerships coming together in order to make America healthy again, and in turn make America great again, because it's something that I'm always reminded of when I go see my doctor, my regular physician. He said, now that you're at the point you are at life, it's over half of Americans really end up dying because of our choices and because of things like cancer and hypertension and COPD, among other diseases that can be accelerated by simply what's in the food supply. And that's why here at the network we have great sponsors focused on making America healthy again, and we can then live longer, happier, and healthier lives. Because as I see it, you can either go in an uncomfortable manner of avoiding the gym, avoiding church, avoiding healthy foods, or discipline yourself in the correct way. And that might be painful to starve yourself of some things that might look good at the moment, but in turn, you can live a longer, happier, and healthy life for those that you love. So an important thing to be reminded of on this wonderful Tuesday, August 12th. I'm Robert McNeely. It's always a joy to be with you at RSBN's live desk as we await White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt to hold a press briefing. Now, yesterday, President Trump from that exact podium with the American flag intact, but when he stands at the podium, there is the presidential seal and the presidential flag to the right of the American flag, detailing the Home Rule executive order to federalize the safety and the criminal prosecution and the police within Washington, D.C., your federal city, so you can feel safe. If you have been watching the broadcast over the last couple of hours, we had our dear friend Ashley Brassfield from the Daily Caller on the network talking about these crucial issues, which President Trump opened up yesterday saying to all the reporters, it might tend to be liberal in this room, but we all know you want safety. Your families live here, you live here. You don't want to be mugged. I mean, even an ABC anchor mentioned just that. She was mugged on her way to the Bureau a couple of weeks ago. And we don't want that for any of our colleagues. And with whatever people are doing in D.C., whether it's visiting, making America great again through their work in the federal or private sector, public sector as well, or simply covering the daily news, we want everyone to be safe and enjoy the beauty that is the history of the great District of Columbia. And Ashley detailing that there's a shooting outside of her apartment where she lived. I mean, how crazy is that? And We just want people to be safe. It's something that's truly nonpartisan, and sadly, you're going to have demon rats who just want to hold on to power. That's what their party has become, and they're driving quickly into the depths of becoming a permanent minority party as a result of not keeping people safe. It's a far cry from the 1960s when America went through those LBJ years, and it was Richard Nixon coming back politically to call for law and order, much like this president has called for in his return to the White House, and enforcing those laws, because the Otto Penn administration did not enforce those crucial laws. But as Jeanine Pirro mentioned yesterday from that podium, the problem is the crazy laws that are not being, or that are put forward by the Washington, D.C. City Council and approved by the mayor, Muriel Bowser, among other cities in America, that just don't make any sense, like no cash bail, or not charging these people as adults, regardless if they're teenagers or not. When you're talking about attempted robbery or carjackings, attempted murder, they should be charged as adults. Most prosecutors would be focused on that. But we know that Tish James up in New York City, who's now being investigated by this Department of Justice for the very same things, mortgage fraud, that they were claiming the Trump organization did when they had no proof of it, claiming that Mar-a-Lago was only worth $18 million. And clearly, you can look at that and see that that was not the case, and that they made up just a bunch of hoopla in order to get at Trump. That was the goal. That was her campaign. I'm going to get Trump. That was her mentality, instead of actually prosecuting the laws and enforcing that in the great empire state of New York. And this most recently came in the form of Holly. We know her first name. We don't know her last name to protect her identity of her children specifically, but single mom of 3. She's out on night on the town in Cincinnati, and she's sucker punched by a thug. And it doesn't matter the color, the demographic, the background. If you're waiting outside of a club just to cause trouble in the middle of the night, you belong in jail. He was released from the Fulton County prison system thanks to Fannie Willis, the district attorney who also wanted to get Trump, but also admitted on the stand that she keeps gobs and gobs of money, including campaign money, just off to the side, just in case it's a rainy day. They don't deserve to hold local, state, and federal office if they refuse to enforce the law in this country. And this president, this administration, making sure that safety will come back to our big, beautiful cities, especially in the form of what we're seeing with home rule in Washington, D.C. Thank you for sponsoring us. And now we have Karoline Leavitt. We'll throw it right there to the White House.
See all of you here again today. On Friday morning, President Trump will travel across the country to Anchorage, Alaska, for a bilateral meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The brutal war between Russia and Ukraine broke out under Joe Biden's incompetent leadership, but President Trump is determined to try and end this war and stop the killing. As the president has said over and over again, his strong preference will always be for peace and partnership, whenever those outcomes can possibly be achieved. There is no leader in the world right now who has been more committed to preventing wars or ending them than President Donald Trump. Just look at what took place here at the White House last Friday, when President Trump hosted the Azerbaijani president and Armenian prime minister and got the two leaders to sign a historic joint declaration for peace, ending a decades-long conflict that disrupted the region and claimed countless lives. In other news, we continue to see positive economic reports across the board. Today's CPI report revealed that inflation beat market expectations once again, and inflation remains stable. Overall, inflation has run at a 1.9 average annual pace in President Trump's first 6 months in office. Prices for everyday goods continue to decline. Energy prices fell in July, including gasoline, which is down nearly 10% over last year, and propane, which is down 2.5% over last year as well. Egg prices fell once again in July and are down 20% since President Trump took office. Shelter inflation, the largest contributor to overall inflation, is at its lowest level since October of 2021. Wage growth for American workers is beating inflation once again. As inflation declines, this administration continues to be wholeheartedly committed to putting more money back into the American people's pockets. American real wages are up 1.3% over last year and have increased each month since President Trump took office. And small business optimism, according to this morning's report, has also reached a 5-month high. Ignore the panicans and trust in President Trump. That is our motto here at the White House. The America First economic agenda is working. On another matter, yesterday, President Trump took bold action to finally restore law and order right here in our nation's capital. The president declared a crime emergency in the District of Columbia, federalized the D.C. Police Department, and mobilized the D.C. National Guard to end violent crime in our nation's capital. As part of the president's massive law enforcement surge, last night, approximately 850 officers and agents were surged across the city. They made a total of 23 arrests, including multiple other contacts. Last night, these arrests consisted of homicide, firearms offenses, possession with intent to distribute narcotics, fare evasion, lewd acts, stalking, possession of a high-capacity magazine, fleeing to elude in a vehicle, no permits, driving under the influence, reckless driving, and a bench warrant. A total of 6 illegal handguns were seized off of District of Columbia streets as part of last night's effort. This is only the beginning. Over the course of the next month, the Trump administration will relentlessly pursue and arrest every violent criminal in the district who breaks the law, undermines public safety, and endangers law-abiding Americans. President Trump will not be deterred by soft-on-crime Democrats and media activists who refuse to acknowledge this rampant violence on our streets. He is going to make our nation's capital the most beautiful and safe city on earth, just as he promised on the campaign trail. Staying on the topic of public safety, the Trump administration continues to shatter records on border security. According to brand new numbers released this morning from Customs and Border Patrol, illegal crossings have fallen to all-time lows once again. Here were the records set in July. Again, these numbers were released this morning. The lowest monthly nationwide encounters ever, down nearly 90% from the monthly average under the Biden administration. The lowest monthly Border Patrol apprehensions nationwide ever, smashing the previous record set the prior month in June. The lowest monthly Southwest border apprehensions ever. The lowest daily apprehension average ever. The lowest single-day apprehensions ever. And for the third straight month, there were 0 illegal aliens released into the country. Let me repeat that remarkable statistic. For the third month in a row, not a single illegal alien was released by the Trump administration into the United States of America. This is historic. Under President Trump, this border is the most secure it has ever been. When you fortify the border, when you restore deterrence, and when you empower Border Patrol agents and our brave men and women in uniform to actually do their jobs to enforce our laws, like this president has, this is the incredible result. And in the interior of our country, criminal illegal aliens continue to be arrested and removed. Here are some of the criminals arrested by ICE in just the last few days. ICE Buffalo arrested an illegal alien from Jamaica convicted of attempted murder. ICE Buffalo also arrested an illegal alien from Ecuador convicted of leaving the scene of an accident resulting in death. ICE Houston arrested an illegal alien from Mexico convicted of manslaughter. ICE Newark arrested an illegal alien from Mexico convicted of the sexual assault of a minor. ICE Dallas arrested an illegal alien from Mexico convicted of assault causing bodily injury. And already the Trump administration has arrested more than 300,000 illegal aliens in 2025. Again, more than 300,000 illegal alien criminals have been arrested in the interior of our country in the first 6 months of this administration. And despite many false reports in the media, nearly 70% of these arrests have been criminal aliens with criminal charges or prior convictions. This is success all around. This is removing the most dangerous public safety threats from America's communities and returning these individuals to their home countries. So there's been success all around. I'm sure you have a lot of questions today. I'm happy to get to them, so let's get started. And as always, we'll start with our new media seat, who is our podcast host today, Benny Johnson. Benny, why don't you kick us off, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Karoline. As a D.C. resident of 15 years, I lived on Capitol Hill. I witnessed so many muggings and so much theft. I lost track. I was carjacked. I have murders on my Ring camera and mass shootings. I witnessed a woman on my block get held up at gunpoint for $20, and my house was set ablaze in an arson with my infant child inside. And so to any reporter that says and lies that D.C. is a safe place to live and work, let me just say this. Thank you. Thank you for making the city safe, because no parent should have to go through what my family went through, having the fire department rip open their door to save their infant child. And so thank you for your work on securing this city. My question to you is this. Nancy Pelosi has attacked the president for deploying the National Guard to the city, saying that it is to cover for his incompetence. Hillary Clinton has also attacked the president for securing the city of Washington, D.C. I'd like to get your response to Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton.
Sure. Well, first of all, Benny, I'm so sorry that happened to you and your family. There have been, unfortunately, far too many victims of crime in this city, and I know the majority of residents in the District of Columbia agree with you. In fact, a new poll from the Washington Post I was reading this morning, this was released in May of 2024, so it's quite funny how many of you in the media agreed with what the president was saying yesterday, but now once the president says it, many of you are disagreeing with him. But this poll released by the Washington Post found that 65% of district residents think crime is an extremely serious or a very serious problem, and this was up from 56% last year. So the concern that you share with so many other residents in the District of Columbia is real, and that's why this president is taking action to address it. To get to the heart of your question, I think it's despicable that Democrats cannot agree that we need more law and order in a city that has been ravaged by violence, crime, murders, property theft. This should be a winning issue for all Americans. I don't understand. It's just anything President Trump does, the Democrats want to disagree with. I think the president would love to work with Democrats on this issue to bring law and order to America's cities, but unfortunately they have failed, and that's why he's taken this historic action to federalize the National Guard. And as you're seeing from last night's numbers, we already have seen success. We are removing violent offenders, we are arresting criminals, and we are removing drugs and firearms off of the streets of the city to make it safer for all of its residents.
Just a very quick follow-up to that. Given the heroic actions of a member of this administration just a few blocks from this building, will the president consider giving the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Big Balls?
I haven't spoken to him about that, but perhaps it's something he would consider. I'll ask him and get back to you, Benny. Thanks for being here. Gabe.
Thank you, Caroline. Regarding the President Trump summit on Friday, why not invite Ukrainian President Zelensky to that summit? I know the president said yesterday that he's planning to speak with him right after the summit and even before, but why not invite Zelensky, and whose decision was it to not invite him? Was it the president or was it President Putin?
Well, this meeting came about because the president of Russia asked the president of the United States to meet through his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, who, as you all know, traveled to Russia to have a conversation with Putin at his request. And so the president is agreeing to this meeting at the request of President Putin. And the goal of this meeting for the president is to walk away with a better understanding of how we can end this war. And the president said at this podium yesterday when he joined all of you in the room that he hopes in the future there can be a trilateral meeting with these three leaders to finally bring this conflict to an end. But this administration has really used every lever, has taken every measure to achieve peace through a diplomatic solution. And I think the president of the United States getting in the room with the president of Russia, sitting face to face rather than speaking over the telephone, will give this president the best indication of how to end this war and where this is headed.
And another question on something that happened yesterday, but I wanted to get the White House response. A judge ruled that the grand jury transcripts in Ghislaine Maxwell's case should not be released. What's the White House response to that? And do you plan to appeal? And what do you tell President Trump's supporters who want that information released?
We think that decision is unfortunate. Of course, we moved to unseal that information because the president has said he wants to see credible evidence released. As for the appeal process, I would defer you to the Department of Justice for that.
Rachel, thanks so much, Karoline. We are learning that President Trump spoke with Ukrainian President Zelensky. I was curious if you can share any more details about their call, and did Zelensky give President Trump any red lines, any non-starters ahead of this summit on Friday?
Look, I don't want to reveal the private conversations between the president and President Zelensky, but what I can tell you is that the president has deep respect for all parties that are involved in this conflict and are trying to bring this conflict to an end. After Special Envoy Witkoff returned from his meeting with President Putin in Russia, his first phone call was to President Trump. And President Trump's first phone call was to President Zelensky and to our friends in Europe to keep everybody in the loop about where the United States can see moving the ball forward to end this conflict. And so we continue to be very much engaged with President Zelensky and the Ukrainians, but also our allies in Europe as well.
And then just one more for you. How does the president measure success coming out of this meeting? The president at times has suggested that Putin might be tapping him along. Is he prepared to walk out of this meeting if he senses that Putin is not serious about ending this war?
I think I just answered that question for you and what the goal and the expectation of the meeting is. And I won't jump ahead of any hypotheticals, and I'll leave it to the president to speak to all of you after the meeting, which I'm very confident he will. Steve.
Are you optimistic that a deal will emerge from this meeting, or is he simply going to listen?
I think this is a listening exercise for the president. Look, only one party that's involved in this war is going to be present. And so this is for the president to go and to get, again, a more firm and better understanding of how we can hopefully bring this war to an end.
Karoline, how did you settle on Alaska as the site for this? So there were some other sites being discussed. This is like it was a midpoint between the two meetings?
There were many sites discussed, but of course Alaska is a state within the United States of America, so the president is very honored and looks forward to hosting President Putin on American soil.
Last thing, is there a joint news conference plan, or will the president have a solo one? What sort of scheduling stuff?
Yeah, the mechanics and the scheduling, Steve, are still being ironed out. For Friday, we're working with our Russian counterparts to put those plans into action, and of course we'll keep you all apprised on the logistical details of Friday as soon as we get them. Charlie?
The president said at the podium yesterday twice that he was planning to go to Russia. Was that a verbal slip-up, or does he actually plan to go to Russia?
Perhaps there are plans in the future to travel to Russia, and on Friday the president will be meeting with the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska, as you know. Phil?
Last week, the president said the CEO of Intel was highly conflicted, seeking to cite his past investment with Chinese companies that were doing business with the Chinese military. Yesterday, he called his meeting with that CEO a success. So what can you tell us about what the Intel CEO said to President Trump that changed his mind?
The president put out a statement that you cited, Phil. I will leave it at that. He shared his thoughts on that meeting and how it went, and for any further comment on that, I'll leave it to him to make.
Will the Bureau of Labor Statistics continue to put out monthly jobs reports?
Well, look, what I'll tell you about the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I believe that is the plan, and that's the hope, and that these monthly reports will be data that the American people can trust. As you know, the Bureau of Labor Statistics has made massive revisions after the last several points reports that they have put out. And there has certainly been a decline in the quality and the reliability of data coming from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and there's been an increase in revisions. And this president and the administration is finally tackling this problem that so many have talked about, and the president is actually doing something about it. We need to restore new leadership that we can trust. As you know, the president has appointed someone new to take over the BLS, and so we need to look at the means and the methods of how the United States is acquiring this very important data, and all of that is going to be done, and the goal, of course, is to provide honest and good data for the American people to make very important economic decisions on. Michael.
Thank you, Karoline. Two questions, if I may. The president has talked about land swaps between Russia and Ukraine. Vladimir Putin says he wants Russia to hold on to Russian-occupied territory in eastern Ukraine. Is the White House at all concerned about the messaging that potentially giving over or allowing for Russia to maintain its occupied territory in eastern Ukraine, what that might say to other U.S. adversaries like China?
Look, right now, the President of the United States has done more to end this war than his predecessor, Joe Biden, who allowed this war to take place. This war, don't forget, happened at the result of the weakness and the incompetence of the previous administration. And so the president inherited this conflict, and he is determined to end it. And it's a very complex and complicated situation. As for the details of the plans that have been kind of tossed back and forth, I won't get into those, and I will let the President of the United States discuss those plans with the President of Russia, with our European allies, and the President of Ukraine, Zelensky himself as well. Sure, go ahead, in the green.
Thank you, Caroline. As far as the policing and security operations in DC,
Speak up.
Is there a timeline? Do we know what success looks like? Is it going to last longer than 30 days? And also, is there going to be an immigration enforcement aspect to this?
So can you speak up a little bit? The air conditioning is bumping in here for all of you today after yesterday's heater, so we've got to stock up. You're welcome. Go ahead.
Is there a timeline for the security operations here in DC? And also, is there going to be an immigration component to this, and what would that look like?
Look, if law enforcement officers encounter a criminal in this city, and they are an illegal alien, of course the appropriate measures to detain and deport that individual will be taken, as they should. No city should be a sanctuary for anyone other than law-abiding American citizens, and that has been the position of this administration since day one. As for the timing, we will reevaluate and reassess and make further decisions after this 30-day period is up. But within these 30 days, our entire focus is making sure that this is the most efficient operation possible, and that we are removing as many criminals from the streets, and we are cleaning up DC as best as we can, and working with the Metropolitan Police Department to do that. I know the mayor just spoke several minutes ago. I was watching her on television, and she said that an increase of law enforcement officers on the streets will be helpful to deter crime in this city, and we look forward to working with these brave men and women of the Metropolitan Police Department to remove criminals off of our streets and to keep law-abiding citizens in the district safe. Josh.
Thank you. The President weighed in on Jay Powell again today, you might have seen. He said that he's considering allowing a major lawsuit against Powell to proceed because of the, quote, horrible and grossly incompetent job he has done. Can you tell us about that? What lawsuit is he talking about?
He's considering a lawsuit, and I won't speak on it any further. I will allow the President to do that himself.
Is it fair to say the administration is considering suing the Fed chair over this renovation?
That's what the President is saying.
Has he had discussions with anyone about this, or is this just like how advanced is this right now?
At this moment in time, the President is considering a lawsuit against the Fed, and I will leave it to him to comment further on it. Tamara, go ahead.
We talked about yesterday. We talked about the NVIDIA chips deal that the President has struck, as well as AMD, the 15% stake that will go to the government. Do you have any detail on how that came about? The President said he asked for 20% from NVIDIA. Did he make the same 20% ask to AMD, and or is this something the administration is looking to do with other either chips or products, going forward? Is this a model it wants to build on?
Well, look, right now it stands with these two companies. Perhaps it could expand in the future to other companies. I think it's a creative idea and solution. The legality of it, the mechanics of it is still being ironed out by the Department of Commerce, and I would defer you to them for any further details on how it will actually be implemented. But again, this was another idea of the President and his brain trust on his trade team to try to, get good deals for the American people and the American taxpayer.
The report that China is discouraging use of the H20 to some companies. Since this, we're reporting that overnight there was private guidance sent to companies not banning the chip but urging them to steer away from it. I wonder if you have any response to that.
I haven't read the report. I will, and we'll get you a comment on it. Tamara.
Thank you. Last week, the meeting with Putin was sort of described potentially as an opportunity for a deal. Now it's a feeling out. Has there been a shift in expectations within the White House, or an effort to temper expectations about what success looks like for this meeting?
Well, look, I think both can be true, right? The President has always said he wants a peace deal. He wants to see this war come to an end. But this bilateral meeting is a bilateral meeting between one party in this two-party war, right? You need both countries to agree to a deal. The President is accepting this bilateral meeting with Putin on Friday, and I will let him speak further to it after it concludes about how he felt it went.
Also, completely unrelated topic, regarding the president's efforts in Washington, D.C., do you have any specifics about how homeless people will be dealt with, where they would be moved to? What does this look like?
I do, yes, and it's an important question, so thank you for raising it. The Metropolitan Police Department, with the support of the new federal agencies who have been surging on the streets of the District of Columbia, are going to enforce the laws that are already on the books here in Washington, D.C. For far too long, these laws have been completely ignored, and the homelessness problem has ravaged the city. So D.C. Code 22-1307 and D.C. Municipal Regulation 24-100 give the Metropolitan Police Department the authority to take action when it comes to homeless encampments. So homeless individuals will be given the option to leave their encampment, to be taken to a homeless shelter, to be offered addiction or mental health services, and if they refuse, they will be susceptible to fines or to jail time. Again, these are pre-existing laws that are already on the books. They have not been enforced, which is part of the reason for this federalizing of the National Guard, to bring in this assistance for law enforcement. While we are targeting criminals and trying to remove criminals off of the streets, we also want to make DC safe and beautiful, and that involves removing mentally disturbed individuals and homeless encampments as well. So we will be using these regulations and code that already exists to clean up our streets, and we've already had great success. Not many of you picked up on this, but the United States Park Police has actually done remarkable work in terms of removing homeless encampments from the city. Since the president signed this executive order in March, 70 homeless encampments have been removed by the U.S. Park Police. There are only 2 homeless encampments remaining in D.C. federal parks under the National Park Service's jurisdiction, and the removal of those 2 remaining camps is scheduled for this week. So the U.S. Park Police will be leading this effort alongside MPD.
Just very quickly, he had talked in one of the social media posts about moving them very far outside of the city. Is that off?
No, it's not off. We're exploring how we could do that. But again, homeless shelters, offered addiction and mental health services, or jail if they refuse are the options on the table right now. And we'll continue to explore that option.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Karoline. President Zelensky said moments ago that he thinks Russia is preparing for a new offensive on at least 3 different areas of the front line. Is this something that you could confirm based on U.S. intelligence? And if the president sees that Putin is indeed planning major new offensive or moving troops, would he call off the meeting on Friday?
I'm not in a position to confirm or deny or comment on that intel at this time. Monica.
Thanks, Caroline. My question involves Russiagate. A whistleblower alleges that then Congressman Adam Schiff approved leaking classified information to smear President Trump's image during the Russiagate scandal. Does the president plan to investigate Adam Schiff, and what would accountability look like if more information confirms this report?
The president has already said he wants to see Adam Schiff held accountable for the countless lies he told the American people in relation to the Russiagate scandal. I brought Tulsi Gabbard out to this podium to talk to you about all of that, and this administration is taking accountability very seriously. As for this new FBI whistleblower report, I understand Kash Patel last night declassified a 302 FBI document showing that a whistleblower who is a Democrat, a career intelligence officer who worked for Democrats on the House Intel Committee for more than a decade, repeatedly warned the FBI in 2017 that then Rep. Adam Schiff had approved leaking classified information to smear then President Donald Trump over the Russiagate scandal. This is obviously a bombshell whistleblower report. Hopefully more people in this room will cover it as such.
His action to federalize the D.C. police, is the president still interested in working with Congress to end the Home Rule Act, something he's talked about in the past? Senator Mike Lee has a bill on it. Is that something he's still interested in?
The president is very much still interested in working with Congress to address many of the issues that have plagued Washington, D.C., such as the cashless bail policy, which has been a complete disaster for the city. Juvenile delinquency is another major problem in the city that Congress can address. So I know Congress is on recess right now. When they get back to work to Washington, this president looks forward to having these conversations with our friends on Capitol Hill so we can work with them to make D.C. safe and beautiful again. And again, we encourage Democrats to join us in this effort. Perhaps their approval ratings would move up a little bit. If they did, I saw a new poll today, Democrat approval rating is at an all-time low, 32%. If they could just stand by the basic notion of law and order, perhaps they would see that tick up a bit, and we welcome them to do that. Dasha.
Thanks, Karoline. President Trump yesterday at this podium indicated this, so has NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, that in order for peace to happen, it is very likely that Ukraine will have to cede some land to Russia. Zelensky has repeatedly said no land for peace. That's not going to happen. Has this administration communicated to Zelensky that he's going to have to change that position?
Look, I appreciate your asking that question in a different way than your colleague Michael in the back. I don't want to get into the details of these negotiations and these discussions that have taken place out of respect for where we are right now, and I'll let the president speak on it further if he wishes to.
One more about Israel. I know the president has had a call with Prime Minister Netanyahu recently. Netanyahu is planning to seize the remainder of Gaza City. What is the administration's position on this move by Israel's government?
Look, this is an incredibly complex and complicated war that, again, was inherited by this president, by his predecessor, Joe Biden. October 7th was one of the worst days in history. We saw innocent people slaughtered, murdered, kidnapped by Hamas terrorists. This administration has taken extensive time and effort and resources since Inauguration Day in January to end this conflict. We have given many flexible arrangements backed by Israel to Hamas, and unfortunately, Hamas has never agreed. Looking ahead, I will let the president speak on where he sees this going, but this is, of course, an incredibly complex and complicated situation. The administration has made our goal clear. We want to see this conflict end. We want to see the hostages released, and we've tried. The president and his national security team have given extensive effort and time to doing that.
With how Israel has used those resources and the assistance that you've provided?
Look, I'll let the president speak on the further actions that Israel may or may not be taking. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well, Karoline. Thank you. The Kremlin is expressing interest that Friday's meeting will move beyond just terms to end the war into improving bilateral relations. There's talk over how they're interested in potentially restoring direct flights between Russia and the United States. Is President Trump open to those kind of peripheral conversations, or is this directly focused on ending the war in Ukraine?
I think this conversation on Friday is focused on ending the war in Ukraine as far as the president's perspective goes. Those conversations, I think the president is interested in having, but his main priority right now is ending this war and to stop the killing that has gone on for far too long. You're welcome. In the back. Go ahead.
Yeah, two questions on the economy. So first, we've had small businesses tell us that it's not foreign exporters who are eating the tariffs, it's them. And they've held off on raising prices, but soon they're going to have to raise prices. What is the White House's message to them?
The White House's message to our small business owners across the country is you have never had a better ally or friend or supporter in this White House than President Donald Trump, who is a businessman himself, who understands your concerns and who wants to restore wealth back to our country through the powerful use of tariffs, and that's what he's focused on doing, while simultaneously driving down costs. You have to remember, we are 6 months into this administration, and we had a president who had no business experience, had no idea what he was doing, and who funneled billions of wasteful spending dollars into our economy, which created the worst inflation crisis in a generation. Now this president is focused on tackling inflation, deregulating, cutting costs, cutting red tape to make it easier for small business owners to thrive. And again, the economic indicators show that we are moving in the right direction. In January, when this president showed up to the White House, the 6-month annualized core inflation rate was 3.7%. Today, 6 months later, the 6-month annualized core inflation rate is 2.4%. So we are trending in the right direction. Moving forward, since President Trump took office, for another 6 months, inflation will be tracking at 1.9%. At this trajectory, you look at grocery prices, they fell, energy prices fell, fuel oil fell, ship fares fell, propane fell, butter, margarine, eggs, non-prescription drugs. You go through the list of items that are falling. And then I would also point to that report this morning showing that small business optimism has reached a 5-month high. So look, we inherited an economic mess from the previous administration, but this administration is focused on fixing it every day. And part of that is signing the largest tax cuts into law to put more money back into the pockets of these small business owners.
Just on the BLS, they collect the inflation data, obviously. If the jobs data is not reliable, should Americans trust the inflation data?
Well, look, the jobs data has had massive revisions. We want to ensure that all of the data, the inflation data, the jobs data, any data point that is coming out of the BLS is trustworthy and is accurate, which is why the president has restored new leadership at the BLS. Sure, go ahead. Yeah, okay.
Hi, thank you. Hi. Gavin Newsom has said that California is going to sue in response to the government's demand for $1 billion from UCLA over the DOJ's anti-Semitism findings. Newsom has called this extortion and ransom, so I'm wondering what the White House's response is to Newsom on UCLA.
Bring it on, Gavin. This administration is well within its legal right to do this, and we want to ensure that our colleges and our universities are respecting the First Amendment rights and the religious liberties of students on their campuses, and UCLA has failed to do that. And I have a whole list of examples that I will forward to Gavin Newsom's press office if he hasn't seen them himself. Brett.
Thanks, Caroline. What was the reason that President Trump chose to move on from Billy Long as IRS commissioner?
Look, I think the president wants to see Billy Long as the ambassador to Iceland. As you know, that is where he will be headed. And the president loves Billy Long, and he thinks that he can serve the administration well in this position. For now, Secretary Scott Besson will be the acting IRS commissioner.
Timeline for announcing a new pick?
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Ed, go ahead, but then in the back. Yes.
Go in the back first.
Okay, sure.
Thanks, Caroline. One foreign policy and then one domestic question, if I may. There are roughly 30,000 children from Ukraine who have reportedly been abducted and are kind of dispersed around Russia. They've been showing up on these websites for adoption. Is their return a red line for the president in any deal ending the war?
The administration is aware of these reports. I don't want to set red lines for the president on his behalf from this podium. However, the president did encourage Ukraine and Russia to speak directly to one another in terms of these humanitarian issues. And we have seen progress. You have seen prisoners of war swapped between these two countries as a result of these direct talks, as well as children, and that remains a concern, but it's one that Russia and Ukraine need to iron out together, which is why this president has encouraged them to speak.
And then if I can,
sure.
The D.C. action real quick. The president said yesterday that this is a model federalizing the National Guard that could be used to combat really high rates of crime in other cities like Chicago, LA, Baltimore. What sort of authority would he have to deploy forces like that, absent the Home Rule Act?
Look, the president is speaking about what he'd like to see take place in other cities around the country. Right now, this administration is focused on making D.C. safe and beautiful again. When the time comes, we'll talk about that. But I will note that the president wants to see all of our nation's cities be safe. But I think starting with our nation's capital is a great place to begin, and it should serve as a model for the rest of the country. Ed.
Just to bind up a few of the D.C. things, because a lot of them have been asked, but in talking with Congress about potential changes to the Home Rule and whatever else, would he also push the House to finally pass D.C.'s budget so that it has access to all that money that it does need for policing, for schools, and for other services here in the city?
Yes, and as you know, he has done that. He put out a statement calling on the House to take up the Senate's legislation, and he stands by that position.
Let me take you back to something from last month. You guys announced the president was diagnosed with chronic venous insufficiency after his legs were seen swelling. How's he being treated for that? And while you were upfront about those health issues, curious if the White House would be willing to let us speak with his physician directly about those health issues? I know there were a lot of concerns about the last White House not making the physician available. Would the physician be available in this case?
I don't want to make that commitment on behalf of the physician, but it's certainly something we can look into and explore out of the effort of transparency, because unlike the previous White House, there is nothing to hide. You guys see this president working around the clock, literally 24/7, all of the time, and I will be happy to look into that request.
Can we at least get an update on how he's being treated for the swelling legs and for the hands and the other issues?
Look, you see the president every day. He's moving, he's working, he's continuing. There have been no adjustments made to his lifestyle.
Thanks, Karoline. I have two questions, one on DC, but on the Putin meeting on Friday, does the president plan to meet with Putin one-on-one?
Yes, that's part of the plan. And as for the other mechanics and logistics, I will let our team speak to that when they're ironed out.
And on what's happening in DC with the federal takeover, what we've heard from the mayor and the police chief is that their understanding is there has been no change in the leadership structure. In the White House's view, who is in charge of the MPD right now?
If you read the executive order, it will tell you the leadership structure is as follows. We plan to work with the Metropolitan Police Department, but ultimately the chain of command is as such. The President of the United States, the Attorney General of the United States, our DEA Administrator, Terry Cole, who is now serving ahead of the Chief of the Metropolitan Police Department. They will be working together. Nope, Terry Cole, as you heard from this briefing room yesterday, is in charge of the Metropolitan Police Department, and he's working with the chief to ensure that law enforcement officers are allowed to do their jobs in this city.
Caroline? Yeah, thanks, Caroline. I know you said earlier the hope is to maintain monthly job reports, but the president's new nominee for BLS Commissioner E.J. Antoni recently told Fox Business that the BLS should suspend issuing monthly job reports and only issue quarterly reports until the jobs data methodology is corrected. So does the president disagree with that assessment that his nominee is said there, or suspending these monthly job reports a real option?
I think he floated the idea of possibly suspending until they can get the data and the methodology in order. And this president wants to ensure that the BLS, again, is putting out accurate and honest data that the American people can trust. Since you brought up the new commissioner, he holds a master's and doctor's degree in economics from Northern Illinois University. He's the chief economist in the Heritage Foundation's Center for the Federal Budget. And in addition to his work at Heritage, he has multiple other roles. He's been widely renowned for his work on economic issues. He's been called before Congress to testify as an economic expert. So he's a qualified individual, and the president trusts him to lead this important department. Take a couple more questions. Sure, go ahead.
Given that the administration now has jurisdiction over MPD, can we expect, does that mean like personnel changes, hiring, firing? Can we expect leadership changes internally in the Metropolitan Police Department?
I just walked through what the leadership structure looks like right now.
Within the uniformed police department, right? I mean, does that mean that the Attorney General, others kind of have the ability to make those personnel decisions?
I would imagine it means they have the ability. As for any changes, I'm not tracking any. Again, we look forward to working alongside the Metropolitan Police Department, and we did that last night successfully, and we hope we can do that for the next 29 nights. Go ahead.
Caroline,
yes.
So a lot of reports that ICE agents detained a 15-year-old student with disabilities outside an LA high school, even leaving bullets on the sidewalk. How does the Trump administration plan to ensure parents that their children can return to school without fear of being wrongfully detained or endangered by federal agents?
Where'd you see that report?
LA Times.
Okay, well, I'll have to look into the veracity of that report. I read the LA Times almost every single day, and they are notorious for misleading the public. I'm sure there's more to that story than the way that you just characterized it. This administration wants to ensure that all school children across the country in every city, from Los Angeles to DC, can go to school safely. And that's part of this administration's effort to federalize the National Guard in Washington, to ensure that ICE is removing child predators. I just read you a list of a handful, just a handful, of the hundreds of thousands of child predators that this administration is removing off of the streets of Los Angeles and every other community across this country. Because we want to ensure this is a country where American school children can be safe, where they can prosper, and where they are not threatened by violent criminals, whether they are illegal or whether they are American citizen homegrown criminals, as this president calls them. So I will gladly go check on that report, and I'll get you the facts. Thank you.
Caroline?
Caroline.
Another great press conference by the White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, the GOAT, the superstar, as President Trump puts it, holding a press briefing today on the countless issues facing the administration, from the home rule decision yesterday by the president to the upcoming trip to Anchorage, Alaska, for the bilateral meeting between President Trump and President Putin of Russia. And I'm sure we'll get more details on that taking place on Friday, which is hopefully the first major steps towards peace. It's a meeting that the president of Russia did request to sit down with President Trump. And as President Trump mentioned yesterday, that will likely lead to further discussions with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky as we enjoy this early afternoon on Tuesday, August 12th. Thank you for joining us at Right Side Broadcasting Network's live desk. And stay tuned, because Judge Jeanine Pirro, the D.C. prosecutor, will be on the other end of this at 2 o'clock Eastern, diving deeper into her comments yesterday at that press briefing at the White House. Thank you to our sponsors on the right side of history, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. It's ivermectin, mebendazole, now 25% off. And how important is that to stock the cabinets and take these life-saving medications with you on the road? Over 200 essential medications, in fact, with antibiotics and emergency medical kits. Also an extra 10% off using code RSBN10. And you deserve this, because we have a situation where PBMs are not prescribing these specific medications, and this is a team of doctors and pharmacists, nurses committed to you, healthcare professionals who want you to have this life-saving medication within 24 hours of ordering it, and at the long end, 2 to 3 days, coming right to your door via online shopping. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. And if you like what you see here at the network, please feel free to donate at RSBN by going to rsbnetwork.com/donate. You can text RSBN, in fact, to 801-801 if you like the old school way of doing things. Please feel free to send a check at 1550-1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344 in the loveliest village on the plains, Opelika, or Auburn, Alabama, at 36830. So that's 1550 Opelika Road, Suite 6, Box 344, Auburn, Alabama. Thank you for supporting us here on the right side of history, as you see those great shots from last year on the campaign trail. And I've just been informed by Mr. Director, Dana White has just officially announced and confirmed that the UFC will host a fight at the White House on the 250th birthday of this great country, the 4th of July, 2026. The golden era just getting started, so all exclusive offers of America First updates can be found at rsbnetwork.com/newsletter. Of course, feedback at rsbn.tv. If you wish to opine, stay tuned for the next broadcast in roughly 10 minutes. Matthew Alvarez and I switching on the desk here. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you very soon on this beautiful Tuesday in Washington, D.C. Signing off from Auburn, Alabama. Goodbye. God bless.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.